get started, I do want to note that we are 9 board members. Betty Arnold could not be here today. And then thank you to our commissioner and deputy commissioners who are with us. We appreciate the public who is joining us and several staff members. Thank you, Rayleigh, for getting us all set up here. We appreciate that. So, we are good to go, hopefully. Okay, well, we're here, obviously, to hopefully get a lot of work done, to try to wrap our minds around our thoughts around technology. I'm going to start with, as I and Dr. Steele talked about this day, one of the things was just reminding ourselves, as you can see on the guide for policy development, is the state board's role. Constitutionally, we have policy making governance over the state, over education. We have the, I'm not going to read it to you. You have it in front of you, but we know our role. We want to do that well. And KSDE's role, the agency's role, as they facilitate, inform, and execute. So it's a partnership, obviously. And we do have those in the room who have been inside our buildings for years and years and years, and may understand, as well as our board members that we have. So we obviously want to hear from everybody's perspectives. So, Dr. Steele, why don't you?
Can I kick this off?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So what you're going to see is 2 major documents. One is called A Guide for Policy Development, Classroom Technology Use. This is going to be our roadmap today for our conversation. If I show you my hand right now, my weakness will be moving this through time. So if you could all help me through this. The thing I don't want to do is have a robust conversation for 12 hours on topic 1, and then we're all exhausted for topic 2 and topic 3. So just that judicious, let's walk through this, and we can always come back. Just remember that. This is, as a reminder today, we have boom mics on. You will be heard everywhere, always. Talking or whispering, you will be heard. So we have boom mics, we're live, and we're streaming, and we are taking no action items today. So we'll talk about the plan on this, but I just wanted to be clear on that. So I think an important part here on the shared understanding on the first page is that the board establishes policy. That's you, the board members. KSDE implements the policy. So our job is to facilitate, to bring, and to collaborate with you. And what we're going to do today is try to hone what the board is thinking so that when we do a receive item, it better reflects all members of the board, and we're not just coming up with something that we want to see. That's the goal of this conversation. On page 2, we have rules of engagement. I don't mean to demean anyone. I know that we're all adults, but if we could just talk about this. This is a little bit different, I think, than I've seen in a couple years of just trying to work an entire board with the policy options. So first one is to seek understanding before agreement. The goal is not just to have people agree. We want to know what are we talking about. And our goal is also not to persuade or win a debate. Share the airtime. If I could be so bold to say if you talk more than 3 minutes, you're probably outside the lane of good airtime on one comment. And then I would also recommend that if you give a comment, let the other board kind of work its way all the way through before you bring back another comment. I think that'll just help. We want all voices to have the opportunity to be heard as we try to move quickly.
And I will just say, I mean, honestly, this aligns with our boardmanship within our policy. So when Dr. Steele brought this up, like, that's perfect, because it just kind of outlines what that means to walk in boardmanship. So we just want that agreement up front that that's what we're doing.
Yeah, thank you. The third is to focus on the policy question. I think this is going to be one of the dual hardest parts. It is easy to trail off into the technology world and start talking about cell phones or talking about what kids are doing at their house or talking. We have to focus on district devices and what's happening in the school day and brought home by the district would be my thing. So help me focus on that. Disagree respectfully doesn't mean don't disagree. I just really want to push that. Disagreement is a good muscle to use. What is good is we challenge ideas, we challenge assumptions, and we poke at evidence. We're just not poking at people, and then be open to learning. I would argue, my guess is most of us know where we want to be, perhaps not. So maybe there's a moment where you learn something new and you actually are persuaded by another viewpoint. And then number 6 is, the key for me today is move towards a decision point. We've been on this, we gotta move. And so we'll take all the time that we need, but I just wanna hit that right there. So that's kind of our rules of engagement. Looking really quick at page 3, this is mine and I only approve this for myself, so you may look at it like, I don't agree with you. That's totally fine. I made us a note at the top of page 3, and let me read the note. The most effective way to ensure technology use is purposeful and instructionally relevant use is purposeful and instructional relevant is to align it to the curriculum and standards while ensuring Tier 2 interventions are aligned with core instruction and supported by evidence. While screen time considerations are important, a focus solely on minutes of use may distract from the more fundamental question whether technology is improving teaching and learning. That is Jake Steele's philosophy. You don't have to agree, but my belief is there is a more important conversation than screen time, which is, are we improving teaching and learning in Kansas? And do screens help that or distract from that? So the goal today is to create space for thoughtful board discussion, gather perspectives and considerations, identify a path forward for future policy development. Here is my opinion on how we need to move through time on the path. In August, where we are, we're continuing to gather and discuss information, share perspectives, and we have staff members here that are helping take notes to identify key policy considerations with the board is leaning. We may need some more time in August, but my hope is September we've narrowed it to a receive item for the board, and perhaps another month of working that receive item. At the very least, we need a receive item in October so that we can act in November. I mean, of course we have December, but our goal was to pad ourselves with time, so we want to have the board act in November. Everyone good so far? Anyone disagree or throw me out yet?
Yeah, does that make sense? Okay.
Okay.
We're gonna do the conference. Where were we doing that?
I was going here for the 3 potential policy making decisions.
I'm saying, what do you want to open up for the
Oh,
conference?
see it right here. Yep, this is it.
Okay.
Do you want to do that? Or do you want me to?
Yep, let's start there. So when we ended yesterday, we talked about if you could bring in just a minute or two real quick, not detail of what you heard at the KSDE conference, but your overall, what was your sense, what was your feeling when you walked away of what the different conversations you had? So we'd love for anybody to share.
Ladies first.
I was just going to say, the people that really sat down and spent what I would call a good amount of time for asking questions and hearing my perspective, all talked about how in their districts, they already had a plan that was being implemented in a way that students felt respected, they felt that their property, so that's getting off on something. But, so, they just felt that students felt respected in their individual districts, and they thought their plan was working well, and some questioned why something was coming down from another agency to tell them how to do what some of them have been doing for years. So that was pretty much, and as they shared, many of them had what I would call model plans, so I directed them to go talk to the young man who had come on my thought sign here today.
Yeah, Chris.
Yeah, Chris, yeah. To go and talk to him and share what they had.
I would basically the same thing. The districts are recognizing that, and I need to, I'm going to be a little longer, 3 minutes probably, but I was an early adopter, and because we didn't have any data, but now we do have data, and I think that we need. But what I heard was there is a place for technology, and there have to be professionals in the building that we need to respect, because they're there and we're not, and they fear a mandate, and so I think we need to be open to that. We need whatever we do, we need to respect and listen to the people that are actually in the classroom, because there is an appropriate use for technology, and there are places where it's overused, and we need to make sure that we keep that balance.
I had two meaningful conversations, one with the superintendent and the other was with a math teacher from Mineola that we had a presentation from. And they were both very proactive in their approach to using technology correctly. I thought it was, their reasons for using it was really very directed toward education, not entertainment. That's been my biggest fear, is that, are you just filling time with screen time and not really using it as for instructional time? And they both were very clear about that's their objective. And I was just really encouraged by that. And I think that the issue is recognizing where children are in their development and what's appropriate for them. And they seem to both have that as a kind of a guideline. So I was really glad to hear that, because I think, personally, I think that's terribly important.
Stay within the conversations you had, if you could.
Yes. Well, I mean, they described that as where they decided where it was instruction,
Okay,
you know, in accordance with the age appropriate.
gotcha.
So,
Thank you.
I think that's really important.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's right. Dan, would you?
Great conversation with a whole bunch of people, and it's from no screen time to we want it all the time. It was a great conversation, great input from, and like Dr. Pearl said, a lot of schools already, they realize that technology is a problem with the younger age, and they're starting to address that. Because a lot of them were like me, technology is the way to go, but we're finding out that it's not. But it was a great conversation, and a lot of good input. And of course, I poked back a little bit, and they all are having a problem with getting the parents involved and saying, yes, this is what we want to do, and we need to. That would be one thing I would suggest we really push. But parents have to opt in to anything that the school district does.
Keeping in mind that most of the people that we talked to were educators and worked in schools, I definitely heard everywhere is different, every district is different. It made me think about coherence, how it didn't feel particularly coherent as I talked to different people. I heard that they recognize that there are gaps. Safety education came up a couple of times in the context of like digital literacy and what do we feel like we could be doing a better job of. But really, I heard an awful lot of feedback on the CTE front. I heard concerns that the board is somehow going to take action, or the legislature may take action that would cut their legs out from under them on CTE. So those teachers that I talked to were very concerned about CTE access. And then I think the message I really got loud and clear was, don't blindside us. They were really caught off guard by the cell phone bill, and I got a lot of feedback on cell phones, AI access, journalism, being able to create things, marketing, kids that are in video production. There are a lot of things that they're headed back to school and they don't know how they're going to manage some of those things that previously at the high school level, particularly in your Blue Valley CAPS and those special programs that exist in some of our bigger districts, they're just not sure how they're going to manage that. So I think that was a big chunk of what I heard from educators.
Thank you. Anything else? And I did make it for that portion, despite I was being sick that week. I had, I think, the same conversation over the CTE kind of concerns, but that was more like, again, from the educator side. I also had an educator who came to me, and I think she's the one that stood out to me the most, because she was like torn. Because she said on the educator side, she was more along that line, but she said on the grandparent side of things, and she showed me images from her grandchild's school device. And it had bloody, blown up people, heads popped off, all that kind
of stuff, you know, that the gore and the violence, and it was accessible on that school item. So she's like, if we can't protect against this,
Right,
you know, what benefit is helping
yeah, makes sense.
despite that? That's pretty much.
And Connie, you weren't able to join us, were you?
Yeah, because every year it's held during our county fair.
Oh,
And I've had a booth there for the last 20 years,
gotcha.
so it's hard for me to get down there.
That's okay. All right.
But when I was campaigning, I heard a lot from parents
Yeah.
about device time.
Well, I would say what I heard was mostly from administrators and a great concern of, what are you gonna do? And I appreciate that, because I know that many of them do already have things in play and are working hard. And I've heard that throughout, just being in different places, even Quinter, when I was there, like, they're looking at it, they realize they have to ask the why. Why are we using the tech? And that's the one. And to me, that's the whole mindset shift. And what kind of hit me even this morning was, like literacy, we had to have a full shift from full language balanced literacy to what really works, which is structured literacy. And we have walked that and are still walking that, because it's a complete shift. And to me, that's what this is. This is creating a complete shift of tech to why? What are we using it for? Is it benefiting students truly? And if it's not, then why are we using it? So,
Okay,
put you back to you.
thank you.
You're gonna-
All right, so we are
Michelle,
gonna,
I'm so sorry. Oh,
sorry,
you weren't
Michelle.
there.
No,
I just
Yeah,
want-
please.
I did have people email me
I'm
about,
so
I
sorry.
did have constituents email, and I think some of the things with the computers too in the school, depending on what district you're in, and the one-to-one devices sometimes can be so locked down, like that when you're trying to look up resources, you're limited to which resources you're looking up. So if you're doing, like what Melanie was talking about, if you're trying to do, like we kind of learned through the cell phone task force, they were having their kids take out the phones to get access to other resources, like looking up court cases if you're in business law class. I mean, things like that where that computer's so locked down to just so specific resources that is that true learning. And that was what, you know, a lot of times you want to do that homework at home because my computer's not locked down and I'm having access to it with my child. We're able to go and research different things together. Or at the school, if all homework's being done at the school, are we limiting those resources as far as, you know, evidence-based things that are, if you're trying to go out and learn something, are we being so locked down to only learning through a certain lens? And that's what I kind of hear from parents is maybe, you know, if you were to go to the library and look up books, you could look up different things, you could spend time going through pages. If it's all done in the school, you're maybe not having access to other resources that are beneficial, especially for history or a business law class or something like that.
Okay. Sorry about that, Connell.
Sorry, thank you. Okay, on page 4, what you will see is our path today. I'm proposing that we have 3 potential policy-making directions. The first is issue statewide guidance, and that's it, right? And then we will discuss what does that guidance look like, what would you want in it, how does that need to be done. The second would be require a local policy. Again, we'll go into the details, and there's options within these of the state board wants every district to have a policy. You could just say that generally, or we can go dig into and the policy must have, and we'll talk about these. And then the third is parent acknowledgement of student technology use expectations. So some way, this would be perhaps a high burden of every parent has to sign off that technology is allowed, okay? So we're gonna hit those. The board could pick multiple of those. There are other topics, to be clear, that I have on a list of I'm hearing you, but I will be lucky to get through these, so I'm not trying to take all those other topics you're talking about. So my goal is to hit all of these. I have some discussion questions. We'll see how it goes if we actually just look at them really quickly and then an open discussion. Or if we go one by one, and then each of these sections kind of has a, what's the task, what's the discussion, and then what are some options. The options are not made for you to be like option 1, period. It is to say, I like option 1 if, and we're just constantly adjusting to find the right kind of, as we bring things back. Is everyone clear on that? The first one's a little more wordy on my part. I hope it doesn't have to be more than it is, but pull out the Wichita Public School future-ready learning with purpose technology. Anyone sitting there should have, we printed enough copies that we're more than happy to get people. You all? Okay, so what we have is, this is not Wichita's policy, but this is a new document they created and will be going through with all of their teachers. I'm not trying to hide my opinion here. Maybe a good commissioner does, and they're very neutral. I will not. I think this is a phenomenal document, and I think if they use it as a guide, I would be very impressed if my kids were there or if I was there, and I would like to walk through this document. I didn't give you enough time, but I asked some that, hey, come prepared to talk about it, so I'll open that up for, did you see anything you liked? And if I don't hear a lot, then I'll guide us through this document. But let me open it up to board members first. Anyone get the chance to look at it, and what are some things that again, you liked or you didn't like, you thought was overreach or underreach? We want to hear all of these things.
I'm happy to jump in.
Please.
I was really excited by everything that Wichita's doing, really, because it extends into everything that they're doing on the IT side. But I'll just start by highlighting, I liked that they placed digital citizenship high on the list of things that they're focusing on with students. And I think that there are, when I look across the spectrum of all of the information that I've collected, I just find a lot of gaps. And I feel like Wichita has done a really good job of filling in all of those little gaps. Does that make sense? I think that they've been very thoughtful about covering all of their bases, and just based on the experience that we've had in working with them, I know that they're going to continue listening to teachers and community, and that this is likely an ever-evolving document.
I spoke with Superintendent Bielefeld, one to say, hey, can I use this document and kind of allow us to tear it up and all of those things, and he was very gracious, and he said if the state wants to use it, and if we want to, so there's just a very openness, but he did say it's an ever-evolving document, right? Because the point is that it guides us. Can I just piggyback on your point? So if you look at page 2, you're seeing a table there, if you need, and then go to. So they say, hey, the purpose of this document is not to be put on a shelf and get dusty, it's a guide. So here are their topics. To your point, they hit all the gaps. Their topics would be acceptable technology, examples of what high quality tech looks like, a list of practices to avoid, digital citizenship, practical next steps that teachers can take, how to respond when parents and family members have concerns, advice on device management, and then the research. So that everything in this is covering those sections. And then their goal is go to the section that means something to you and work through that piece. What else did we hear? Sorry, what else did we see?
Can I do a Danny down for a minute?
Yes.
So the problem we're gonna have is that the legislature's gonna come in and say, you can only have your kids on this time. They're gonna make law, and it's gonna mess everything up for each school district like it did with the cell phone policy. So my prediction is that, or not prediction, but I'd like to see that the local boards and or superintendents get a hold of the legislatures in their area and keep their butt out of our business. Because based on, we had schools come present to us, and we did a good job on the task force. There was 247 schools that had policy on cell phones, and we had some great policy. We had a good, with Beloit come talk to us, they had a policy that worked great for their particular school district, and nobody listened to them. And and Beloit, the parents were involved with that also, which I really respected, that they had the parents involved, and everybody was, it was the whole area, Beloit area on board. And so what's gonna happen, we're gonna do a great job, give good guidance, and then the legislature is gonna come in and do their stupid stuff that they do. And I'll call you out.
I think he's pointing at the camera.
I'm sorry, I'll shut up.
Nope, what I heard there is that, parents, districts, teachers, go to the legislature, let them know what's going on, right? The more they know, the better decisions all of us make. And then I would say for us, we gotta do what is best for kids,
Yeah.
and that is our highest aim.
Amen.
So, great, thank you, Danny.
May I comment?
Please.
It really hurts me to agree with Danny. And this is not a tough topic for today, but I heard that day more concerns with the cell phone policy than I did with technology. And I think, and some very legitimate concerns. So at some point, I think that it's our responsibility, if we're gonna support students and schools, that we have a discussion about, we can at least make some suggestions to the legislature about some things that need to be adjusted. And now I'll stay on subject from this point on, Madam Chair.
Holding you to it.
Maybe.
Other topics in this guide.
What I really liked was on page 4, their research in a nutshell, and how they're trying to hit every piece. Because you see that throughout the document, right? I mean, they literally are like trying to hit every point possible. The only thing I would ever add in is the whole digital health thing, which is a little different than actual citizenship, but you know, we have to go where we can go. So all of that will feed on each other, I'm sure. But the balancing, the standards aligned technology, you know, the things that really do sit under, because if you look at somewhere in here, it's, I mean, they're all about high quality instruction. That's what this is based on. And that's speaks to me hardcore, because I feel like all of that sits under truly high quality instruction materials. And if you sit there, then make sure that that's the pass or fail test of what you're using the technology for.
If I can hit those points just really quick, since we're on page 4, what they're saying is the research principles behind their guidance is number 1, quality over quantity. Number 2, active beats passive. Number 3, standards aligned technology works when implemented well. Number 4, balance matters for well-being. And 5, digital citizenship is a skill, not an add-on. The box on the bottom line. The goal is not less technology or more technology. The goal is better technology use, intentional, active, and balanced, so that every student is future ready. When the research raises legitimate concerns, our guidelines address them directly.
So what's the meaning of future ready?
Their future ready is to make sure that their graduates are prepared to be in the workforce or to go on to college, and that they have the skills and abilities necessary, so they don't get into the workforce and have never touched technology, or they're addicted to passive technology, or so their future ready is their slogan for their centers and other things that are preparing people for the future. That's their slogan.
And if you, it makes me think of our student yesterday when she talked about, she was speaking to future Kansas, like trying to think ahead in what do they need. And you talked about their, I think in your report, you know, because they're different buildings and their CTE type programs, you know, trying to give kids a place to succeed.
Yep.
So that's how I see it, is just looking at that success piece.
Dr. Smith, are you trying to, as you're presenting this, are you saying that this might be good framework for us to work off of for us?
Yes, and so you'll see, you haven't seen it yet, but one option is like endorse this and
Well,
just
that
tell
was
people.
option one, yeah.
Yep. Another option is, what in this do you like? And maybe it's not endorsing this, but it's pulling some of those things out and creating our own guidance.
And you would want your concerns in right now too?
Yeah,
So it's not
absolutely.
just structure,
Yep.
but building?
Yep, absolutely.
Well, because my immediate, when I looked at that, if you need go to, was the responding to parent-family concerns. Because in the world of empowering those parents, what I would not, I would not find this to be good for the parents. It might be good for the school, but I would be more focused on what's good for the parents. I don't see in here any indication where there's real conversations going on with the parents about how they could approach their concerns, that they have the right to opt out. Because everything is what a parent might say, and then they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Page 16, if anyone's searching.
Yeah, 16. There's like 7 things, and it's basically how to navigate around the parent and reassure them that we're doing okay. And it really isn't instructional to the parents about their rights, about where maybe to find their own research. Maybe they have alternative research they want the parent to look at, you know, to direct the parent towards. the parent might direct them towards something, you know, but at the end of the day, we need to honor that the parents have that final say.
Good, thank you, Debbie.
Can I follow up on,
Please.
so the problem is we keep talking about opt-out. We never talk about opt-in.
Danny, I'm giving you your gift today. I'm gonna talk about opting in.
Okay, because, again, we have to be more open with the parents. And you can't, your child can't, if you want them to use technology, great, but you have to come in and sign off that they can, otherwise we're not gonna let them be on technology. And then the other thing we need to make sure that we talk about, if we're doing all this technology, if a parent doesn't want their kids on technology, they have to make sure they have the textbooks or the learning where they don't have to use that also, but they still get schooled.
Yes,
Other-
because I have heard that feedback as well, that they're like, sorry, you have to use the technology, it's all we have. And that's not appropriate response.
I agree.
I guess my concern would be, where's the books? Are they gonna be on the computer, or are they gonna be in handbooks? I mean, if you're gonna have limited technology, then you're gonna have to bring the books back into the classroom. And so, where's all that gonna fit in eventually? Because it says here, kindergarten's no
Yeah.
time. So where's the books?
Connie, will you go to page 10 really quick,
Okay.
everyone? So this is a section they put in called What High Quality Technology Use Looks Like. And they're trying to talk the difference between what is active and passive. So passive is bad. Let's be clear, passive is bad for all of us. So this is not just students. So it's going through a list of active use, transitional use, and passive use and helping. But let's look, I want to direct us to the bottom, the quick check questions. Before assigning a technology-based task, ask yourself these 5 questions. Number 1, what is the learning objective? If you cannot name it clearly, the tech task may not be necessary. I might have been a little bit sterner on that, which is that don't bring tech. If you don't have a clear objective, you shouldn't have tech at all, my personal opinion. Number 2, does the technology add value that a non-digital approach cannot? If pencil and paper work just as well, choose that. Again, that may not be enough, but I do actually like that they are kind of, unless technology is a benefit. So if there are books, I would argue, and that is read the books. You don't have to agree, but that's the closest thing that they would get, I think, to
I
a,
can't see a kindergarten holding their little iPad and reading a book.
yeah.
And it says no technology, that's their goal in here, no technology in kindergarten.
Correct.
So when I'm thinking of school districts gonna have to go out and buy books, or maybe before they had everything on their computers.
I don't think you see that at the kindergarten level. I mean, although I have heard of it at the little high end.
Yeah. I'm not trying to dismiss that. I think,
I'm just thinking of the cost.
well,
Down the road.
Yep. All right, I want to go into this kindergarten piece. I'm going to keep pushing us, but push back on me. I'm not trying to be tired. Go to page 5. Page 5 is an example. If we can, I'd love to hit an example of grade band. So they broke up their plan by grade band. So not all grades are the same. So I would like us to look at, there's all of the bands, but I'd like to look at kindergarten and then high school just to get a feel for us as the board. This is the longest we're going to dive in. The rest will just be truly conversations and things like that. And then I did ask the chair if the deputy commissioners could join us, so I do encourage you, please say anything that you would like. It is theirs to make, but your input matters. So, all right, grade bands, page 5. What you see is device enrollment. Kindergarten classrooms do not have assigned student devices. Technology use is limited and teacher directed. So their rule is the teacher has to direct the use of technology. And I just want to be clear, we're not trying to hide anything. There are classroom sets, is my understanding. They are just not assigned to students. So when you go into a school, you're like, I see a set. They're not saying there's not a set. They're just saying they don't check one out to each individual school. They explain why the limits. I am going to skip over this, but it is a little bit about that research. And then here's their guidelines for daily use. So daily use, minimum to none. Prioritize hands-on play, social interaction, and physical movement. Teacher-directed or whole group, so that is its purpose, it's not individual child. Short, interactive lessons use the classroom projector or interactive display 5 to 10 minutes maximum. Okay, I just want you to sit with that. If a kindergarten used 5 to 10 minutes maximum that was directed by the teacher, are we like, hey, that is a reasonable thing to do, or is it like, just ban them all, right? So I want to sit in that kind of friction there.
So
Please.
would you say in that, because what I'm reading in that 5 to 10 minutes, that is literally a whole group, that's not a one-to-one situation?
Yes, teacher-directed whole group. Now, I would argue, whole group could be everyone is on a device, but the teacher is directing what to do with that device, and that is a 15-minute activity, and devices are put away. I'm not saying that is, I don't know if that is best practice, I'm just saying that is what I'm seeing personally when I read this.
Okay.
But also if we're, I have a catch-22, because also if we're saying you can only be on there 15 minutes, every teacher,
Correct.
every
Yeah.
teacher is different.
Yeah.
Maybe they want to be in 5 minutes, maybe this teacher wants to be on 15 minutes.
Yeah, I read it as a maximum of 15. I don't know if that is per activity or per day, to be honest, but just to throw that out.
And can I back up? Please weigh in. We want to hear from you. Even if you don't agree, I'm okay if you don't agree.
No, Debbie loves a good fight, you know that.
He does.
I want
But he wants you to look at the camera when you come with the fury.
I want to hear from y'all.
Yeah.
That's important, because you guys are in it every day.
One of the, so say, I'm not gonna make say now, but just jump in. Acceptable use, I actually personally really value this because it's telling someone what they can do versus always talking about the things we cannot do. Teacher-led virtual filtering. Shared reading on screens, I don't think we'll all agree. I think Connie's saying, hey, I want to see more book reading, but maybe there's a task there. Interactive songs or movement videos, let's get up and move our bodies. Brief whole group digital modeling, okay? Digital citizenship, one of the things I like is that you're talking about to a kindergarten appropriately about what does it mean to be a digital citizen. Begin conversations about being kind online, taking care of devices, and balancing screens and non-screen activities. I think maybe that could help them in their own personal life of what happens when I get home. My teacher's helping me understand screen activities. And then the key principle here is learning at this age is primarily physical, social, and sensory. Technology should be a brief supplement, never the primary mode of instruction. I think if I was an administrator or even the Commissioner of Education, I could walk into their kindergarten classroom and I have a guide of what I expect to see there. I value that. And I can come in and say, your primary mode was technology. That doesn't seem like it aligns with what you just told us. And I'd say that is well spread.
So the word, I think you could put with that then, because we hear it a lot with PISA, and as I've listened, observation tool, like this literally kind of becomes an observation tool for an administrator to walk in and walk through a classroom, where they would have that conversation, like that's not the guidance we have put out for best practice, so.
I said that was standard.
I'll call it a higher ed in this case. Because higher ed, this is me again, they're teaching the teachers that can only know how to teach from the screen. And are they really teaching digital citizenship at higher ed now? I would say no. I said the higher ed, guys better step up to the pump.
I'm sorry, but I have a completely different take on this
Yeah.
one if we're talking about kindergarten.
Yep.
Screens don't belong in kindergarten. The end. So when I think about it as a technologist, I like to tell people, I said this to the commissioner, I can teach you HTML without a computer. Let's get out a piece of paper and let's walk through it. I've been in elementary school classrooms where the teacher has an iPad. A lot of the kids have their own iPads, but teacher has an iPad. You've got a giant TV on the wall. There's a whiteboard kind of behind it, and the teacher's putting up slides. So, hey class, we're gonna talk about this thing. They're gonna hit the thing on they never put the iPad down. They are attached to that iPad, and they are broadcasting to the screen. Kindergarten, first grade, second grade, those kids are seeing slides, very colorful slides. Kids get engaged when you've got a lit up screen, right? They've got that backlighting, and that's what they wanna see, but I don't see teachers standing at the chalkboard, whiteboard, with a marker, saying, okay, let's make a list of nouns in the room. Earl, name a noun. You start writing. I didn't see any of that. It's static, it's not engaging, and at kindergarten, I think it is wrong.
So can I challenge appropriately, right? So max 15-minute, we're studying beluga whales, and I take you on a virtual field trip to the San Diego Zoo where we go through. You're saying, no, shouldn't happen in kindergarten?
The
'Cause you said
virtual
they
field
don't.
trip is the one thing that I'll give some space for.
Okay.
If you have those one-offs, like, let's figure that out, right? I'd love to carve out to that, because there's nothing cooler than going on a vacation with my family and being like, oh, I've seen this online, I know what to expect, I can plan a better trip, I have a better understanding. Coming in with that understanding, I think that that is important, but how do you get there and how do you differentiate between we're gonna do a special thing and take a field trip, and I'm gonna open up an iPad and broadcast to the screen all day, every day?
I hear this is talking about a time limit, right? So I just wanna push that,
Sure.
this isn't saying all day, every day, it's saying maximum 15, and your comment was still
lesson.
doesn't.
Yeah, that's why,
Excuse
my
me.
question.
Per lesson? Yeah, like how often?
Okay, yep.
There's a cadence there.
And can I ask, just because I'm curious, and anyone else jump in, is it that technology does not belong in the hands of students, or that it doesn't belong in the hands of teachers either? Because I think there will be a question, especially if anyone's going for a ban, like, so can we use projectors?
Yeah.
Can we use whiteboards? Can the teacher have a screen out?
Specifically, I've said before, I'll say it again, I think that technology does not belong in the hands of young students. Pre-K,
I agree.
absolutely not. Kindergarten, absolutely not. I would like to see a ban through second grade, where we are not issuing devices to students through second grade, in any capacity. In third grade, we've got those tests.
Including classroom sets, I'm just being clear, right?
Including
So that
classroom
nobody
sets.
plays that game.
Including classroom sets. In
I'm
third grade,
really-
there's testing. I'd be flexible on that.
I don't know if I'm allowed to
I'd like to
comment.
play the
I-
other side sometimes. What about all the parents with their kids at home have the little device
Yeah.
and they know how to use it better than the teacher?
That's a
Okay.
no.
That's what, exactly, cannot
I mean,
control.
because
all.
I've seen
Okay,
it.
Beryl?
Yeah, well, I was just kind of reflecting as I was hearing comments, and I know, Dr. Steele, when you sent this out, I read through it, I was really impressed, because I think it's a strong document. As I'm listening now, I'm becoming more and more impressed with this document, because it answers the question, why?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so I think for any district, if they focus on that question, why are we using it? And they may say, we don't need to use it in kindergarten, or we don't need to use it up through grade 2. But at least they're looking at their reasons, and teachers should as well. So, I know what we've seen, and I've seen it too, and I've done many classroom evaluations at the high school level, and it can be a crutch. But if people have to ask the question, why am I incorporating this into my lesson plan for today, and I can use pencil, paper, or some other resource, then now I'm really thinking about what I'm choosing to use,
Now we're talking.
and hopefully moving away from what I've leaned on for decades, whatever.
And if I can just put a pin in this, just so, I think the state can give guidance and have a statement. Your guidance is to blah, 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 and we believe that it does not, right? You could get to the space where you still have a we believe that doesn't have to be a mandate. Technology does not belong in the hands of kids in this. Like, if the board came up with that, you don't have to mandate it to have a statement. So as people build their own path, they can be like, oh, well, there are some professionals that believe this. I'm not trying to placate, but that is an option.
I think Dennis has.
I want to build on what Melanie has said. I'm really concerned about what is actually happening with the brain. And
Yes.
after reading Digital
Yes.
Delusion by Orloff, it's like, we can't take that risk of putting a device in the hands of kids, and when there's better ways of them learning at that age. And I think the science would prove that out, and just as a normal activity with my grandchildren, I see their personalities change when you give them a device. They almost like ignore me. They forget that I'm, there to. maybe it's me, but
No, that's right.
Dr. Harvard said, and the statement that I fall back on, and I just have to say that he probably was going to the extreme, but he said, it isn't the management, it's the mechanism. That's the problem. And it's not the correlation, it is causation. So I think we need to err on the side of what is really the best thing for children at that age group, and having them handle a book, turn pages, feel those things, and manage it themselves. I think that's the key, and I think Melanie's trying to describe that.
Well, and the 3 M's that I found my notes from when we had higher ed in front of us in June, method matters most, and that's what we're talking about. Like the method, the quality, the high quality of what you're doing matters. It's not just the information, it's how it's being delivered and taught, so.
I just want to hit this point if I can. Again, just multiple views. On page 18 of their guidance is their appendix, and it's research-based. And I think their big takeaway is cautionary on and contradicting research. So they're willing to say reasonable experts are seeing different things in this. So let's just, right? I think both sides are quick to find evidence that their opinion is working, and I'm not trying to dismiss any of those or to rank them, but they go through some of these things of here are some groups, here are their guidance, here are some things, and on page 19, it's just trying to put like there are reasonable people who have different perspectives. That is not to change your opinion, which is let's be safe and err on the side of safety, which is what you said. I just wanted to put there.
Yeah, as far as evidence, it seems like we pushed right into technology without any studies, any evidence that is how children learn best, or that they actually can learn through technology. So we massively passed that out, and without guidance, without any direction, we just did it. And now, if you go to a doctor, you're going to say, okay, I'm going to go get a second opinion. I've gone to one doctor, this is my child, I'm seeing things differently than what the feedback that I'm getting from this doctor, so I'm going to go get a second opinion. If you see that your child learns better by holding a book or with that paper and pencil, and then you're saying, well, that's fine, you can do that, but we're going to assess you on a technology device. That's how the test, and that's the pushback I'm getting publicly, and all these schools are like, well, yeah, but they're being assessed, not with paper and pencil, which is how your child learns best and retains. Now they're being assessed via a technology device. So we have to, if we're going to think about this, we have to have options as far as a measurement or something that also measures with paper and pencil. Because right now, a lot of these assessments are done via technology, and they're not being done with paper and pencil. So if we're going to allow that to happen, allow that parent to have that option, that their child retains things, retains knowledge, and is not just processing information, which I feel is done on the technology, it's processing information. My own kids will say, I retain better if I take the notes, and I write a list for my mom every week to get groceries. If I leave it in the car, because I wrote that list down, I can go down each item, and I left it in the, I know what I'm doing because I didn't just process it and put it in a phone and have to look it up when I get into the store. So those are things to think about is what's the avenue, what's the option. It's like Danny and we're saying, what if the parents are saying, our child is so much better by having a book in their hand and writing things, and they're retaining that rather than a technology device. What's the avenue for these schools, and how are we going to support them? We're going to be pushing assessments, and everything's done via technology. That's something to think about.
And I'd like to say, I totally agree with Melanie, it's up to second grade, I just nothing. Again, I can make allowances for, yeah, we're going to go to the jungle on video, but even that needs to be limited and not become a crutch. But I think enough families have technology as a crutch that it's really nice that they go to school and not have that in a more structured environment. But I totally would fall on that. And then to Michelle's point, we do have longitudinal data that paper and pencil and books have given our nation a great education for a lot of years. And so we know that works. The question is the digital. So why don't we let the other states experiment on their kids, and we will just see what their data tells later, because we can use it later, but we don't need to experiment on the kids, I don't think.
And to be clear, it's no technology in the hands of students, not students and teachers.
Well, I think with Melanie, with the younger, I would even say the teachers, and here's the reason. I mean, they're going to use technology in between classes to grades and whatever their bookkeeping. But when they're in the classroom with the kids, those kids need that interaction. They don't need the teacher sitting off on her iPad instructing them from across the room. She should be sitting in the in the midst of them reading them a book. You know, that interactive, that, I think those children need that human touch.
If, I'm gonna, can I kind of poke on you, 'cause
Yeah.
is it additive or is it repetitive to what has already been said? Because we gotta keep track.
I was gonna add to something
Okay.
Michelle said because I
Go.
don't wanna drop it.
Please.
I am curious, and I would love to hear from the department, their concerns about assessment scores. And my question is, can we get some better research, or can we collect some research on assessments taken on paper versus digital assessments? And I wanna back up your comments about your kids, because I have heard high school students say, I tried to get, I tried to take the ACT, SAT on paper instead of electronically because I feel like I do better. And so I wanna put that out there as something we might look at.
Anything you want?
Boy, we've been all digital for the state assessment for a number of years now, probably 10 years now. And so getting paper forms and doing that study is possible, but it's a big lift.
Yeah, I'm not saying we have to do it, I'm just saying, if you can find data, I'd love to see it.
Yeah, is there anything out there that tells us? And
Yeah, I know
just
Texas has recently made the switch where Texas was all paper and they've had both options, so that could be a state that we can look at because they have now, I think, fully switched over to digital, but they went through a time period of both.
Because we've definitely heard from those who have said, if you look at the test scores when it went digital, it's a huge drop immediately from this year to this year.
So there were a number of
Whatever his
years,
name is.
there were a number of years in Canvas when they were both online and not. And at that time, what we were hearing from KSDE, because I was principal at the time, this would be in 2003, 2004, so we're talking about a long time ago. And there was not a significant difference between the students who were taking on pencil and paper, or, now again, different students taking the same test, but we can look back and see if there's anything back from that time period.
But they were probably learning primarily without technology.
Right.
Where now we have a lot of learning on tech, and, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I think that the point was is that there was not a big difference
Yeah.
in
Just take
the format of the assessment.
Yeah.
And so the idea that at that time, students were learning primarily without technology in the classroom and then being assessed on technology. The only big thing was, did they ever have a chance to see that platform beforehand? That did make some difference, which is why there were some practice tests and those kinds of things. But as long as the students had a reasonable idea to how to access the platform, there didn't seem to be, but again, that was 20 years ago.
Well, we saw that even more recently with us when we took that sample test. We were having to be instructed on the platform of the test, you know, even just for us doing it. So that makes sense.
But one thing to add on with the, our teachers are being assessed essentially. I mean, if you're talking about the students are being assessed by the state, that reflects the teachers.
Yes, it does.
So we want to make sure that they're like, well, that's how we're, you know, this is how we're teaching or we're instructing based off of these standards or whatever. So rather than the parent and the student and the teacher knowing how that child is progressing, they would know, a professional in the classroom is going to know that. I feel like they've lost so much autonomy because it's like we're just instructing to an assessment or to one test. So how are we going to look at that?
Okay, do you mind if I grab the helm again?
Nope.
All right, go to page 6. I'm gonna try to rip through the rest of this. You can give comments, but there's things I don't want us to miss. I have bias, I have my opinion. I'm not trying to persuade everyone, but just know I have my opinion. So things that Jake Steele liked. So verse 6, you're gonna see they did kindergarten separate than grade 1 and 2. Just make note of that. They chose the grade band this way. Let's look at page 7. This is the grade band 3 through 5. I just want to focus on, at the beginning, it's saying they are shared iPad carts, increased access, but devices are still shared and should be used with clear instructional purpose. And then why these limits? So last time I skipped the research kind of section, but this one I'd like to read it. By grade 3 through 5, students can engage in more sustained digital tasks, research, multimedia creation, collaborative writing, and genuinely extend what is possible on paper. The 45 to 90-minute range is distributed across multiple subjects with breaks between sessions. The ceiling exists because research shows diminishing returns beyond this point, and because students at this age still benefit significantly from non-digital collaboration, handwriting practice, and physical activities. I value that statement. We may have different opinions on that, but I'm glad that they put it in there as telling the teacher the why, not just what to do or not to do. And then if we go a little bit lower, look on digital citizenship. On that same page, right at the bottom, there is no independent AI interaction. So they're starting to engage in the AI space, and they are telling their teachers, we can learn about AI, to your point, we are not doing AI on our own. This is not the space for 3 through 5th grade. The things I liked in there. All right, page 8. This is 6th through 8th grade. So what you're seeing now is one-to-one devices come into the world, okay? But in Wichita's one-to-one laptops, I actually think that does make a difference. As a parent personally, I want to know that my kids can type, and so I don't love iPads personally because that to me is more passive, just watching movies. Like if you're going to give my kid a device, I like to see that it is something that they would use in the future. Perhaps AI takes away our things, but anyway, bad joke. Okay, device environment. One-to-one laptops, students carry their devices throughout the day, but devices stay in the building and do not go home. So I want to be clear, right? They have a clear thing of we don't take devices home. And then why these limits, I won't go over these, but explicit structure, it says these kids still need explicit structure. They are not at the age limit in their development to not have that. And then they have a thing that they call screens down, and it is found in research that requires daily non-tech activities. So they're going through this. It still goes through some of these things. I want to go here to manage student devices. I found this section very valuable right at the bottom. These are school-issued devices, and you are empowered to take them when student safety or appropriate use is at risk. You do not need permission to act. These are not personal devices. And then they have a place for what does short-term removal look like, later extended removal, and beyond that, remind students regularly these laptops belong to the school, using them as a privilege that comes with the responsibility to follow classroom and district expectations. I do like that they build out like, you're a teacher, you're empowered, take them away. And if you read that specifically, you take them away when they're off task, accessing inappropriate content, or misusing the device. So they're being very clear about what a teacher can act.
And what's really good about this document from Wichita, they can sit down with the parent and say, here's the deal. Do you have questions about any of these? What does it mean?
And I will flip it, Danny. I like that now as I as a parent can go in and say, I know your expectations. So why does my kid have a device at home? Right? Again, not to be pokey, but like it empowers the parent to know the frame in which their expectations are. Go to page.
I'd like to point out that if they are, if they have it in their policy that they can take it for extended removal, that means they've already got alternative educational materials for no devices. At least they should have that in place because they wouldn't be taking these devices and not have anything to educate the child, right? So to the point of being able to opt in, not opt out, those things should already be in place. They should already have their alternative curriculum figured out.
Yeah, thank you. All right, page 9. We're looking at 9 through 12. I was going for great. All right, page 9. So you have one-to-one laptop. Students carry their devices throughout the day, and they take them home in the evening. So now we're seeing a shift. I'm not saying you agree or disagree, but just seeing they're explicit about the shift they make. Why this approach? High school students are preparing for college and career environments when digital literacy is a baseline expectation. The shift from structured limited to guided autonomy reflects developmental research on adolescent decision-making while maintaining teacher-facilitated expectations for when technology is and is not the right tool, and then they still have all of the same things in place. Do we pause for a break?
So I'm gonna take it home and I break it. And so now the school has to buy another device, so the parent doesn't have any responsibility if the child breaks that in half.
That's not true.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, not every district.
I'm trying to get on both sides, have a conversation on both sides.
I would say that's not any different than the student taking the book home and losing or destroying it,
Yeah.
and that's the district's policy on what students are responsible for district property. So if they've checked that district possession out to a student, and they should already have a policy about what happens if it is destroyed. It shouldn't matter whether it's a computer or a textbook or lab equipment or a camera, whatever that would be.
And the other good thing about this document too, the local board got everybody involved in this and made good policy. Where a lot of school districts, and I'll call the local boards out, because I was on the local board for several different times. And the local boards need to really be involved in this too. Not just the administrator, nothing against the administrator, but the local boards need to step up to the plate to do what they need to do.
Great.
Okay, we're gonna take a 10-minute break. And
If you're new to this building, the bathrooms are that way. There's also, they have that coffee and kind of snack bar-ish thingamajigger on the bottom floor. I've never used it, but I hear good things. And then they have a gym, if you can get your workout in 15 minutes or less.
2 minutes.
Get in the gym.
Walk out.
spiel. We're gonna finish going
Okay.
through this document just a little bit.
Gonna try to rip through this quickly. After this, the general discussion, in my opinion, is over, and it's just all about good old debate of what's best and why and what do we know. So I'm on page 10. We hit this a little bit, but I just want to hit the two levels that I like and one that I don't like, if I can just leave us there. So on page 10, what high-quality technology use looks like. They have the active versus passive. Not all screen time is equal. The difference between productive and unproductive technology use often comes down to whether students are actively thinking or passively receiving. Use of framework below. So I'm just going to give the one example from the top. Students are creating, designing, or building something new. So that is an active use, and that is the goal, they say. The transitional use is adaptive practice software tied to specific skills, and the passive use is watching videos without a task or follow-up. The thing I like that it's putting things together. What I don't love about this is that it says passive use is minimized. That is not strong enough for me. Like, because if you look at the very bottom one, free browsing without learning purpose, there is never a place for that, in my opinion, ever. Of like, yeah, just go surf the internet and see what happens. So that's not for me personally, but I do like where they're saying, hey, active is it, passive should not be there. And then the quick check, I love these. These are the 5 questions every teacher should ask before they use technology. I think that is arming a teacher to be a better, right? This is a type of professional development. What is the learning objective? Does the technology add value that a non-digital approach cannot? Are students thinking or just clicking? How will I monitor and support students during the task? And what will students do before and after the tech portion?
That's good.
Those are valuable. Okay, page 11. These are examples by grade band of what could be a great use. I'm trying not to just pick on kindergarten, so let's look at grade 1 and 2. The high quality example is a voice recorded retelling. After a read aloud, students open Seesaw and record a 30-second voice retelling of the story, adding their own drawing. On why it works, students produce in their own voice, creating, not consuming. The teacher reviews recordings to check comprehension. So you can decide if like, great, I don't need that anyway, but that's just the idea, and they go by grade band. So again, we're arming teachers. Let's just, if I can, look at grade 9 through 12, the very last one, because it is an AI one. AI literacy debate. So this is a high quality use. Students are given a workplace scenario where AI could be used. Half argue for, half against, citing real sources. After the debate, each writes a position paper on when AI use is appropriate. We're talking 9 through 12 graders. I think I would be personally impressed if I'm watching that kind of debate and having to pick both sides. Okay, page 13, we have unacceptable use policy, perhaps my favorite page. I think all of it is great, but I sometimes, admittedly, I'm a pretty low thinker, and I just love when it's like do and do not do, and this is the do not do page. So the last sentence on that first paragraph, these are informed by both research and by concerns raised by parents and community members nationwide. And then the unacceptable use, we'll just take off the first one, using devices as a reward or free time activity with no learning purpose. I love that they're like, that's unacceptable. We don't use devices for free time. Why it's a problem? Reinforcing technology as entertainment, not a learning tool, contributes to passive screen time. This is one of the most common concerns raised by parents nationwide. And then what to do instead, I like, again, because it's allowing teachers to have a different thing. Offer non-screen rewards if using tech for entertainment, assign a creative or exploratory task. I don't know if I like tech for entertainment ever, if I'm being honest. Oh, enrichment, thank you.
Okay.
Enrichment matters. I can read in public, barely. Enrichment, thank you.
Yeah, that caught my attention, I was like, what?
Anyway, so we could go through these, and we probably should, but with time, these are there. Assigning video or digital content with no structured task is unacceptable. Extended unmonitored use of adaptive software as the primary mode of instruction is unacceptable. Allowing personal earbuds or headphones for non-instructional content during class. That's, I will just say in the 2010 era, that was the problem, right? Every kid was on an iPad, they had, or a thing, they had headphones, and we were all down, and that's what we thought, that's what teaching was then. Using technology to calm or manage behavior, for example, giving a device for a dysregulated student. I'm gonna go to the research on this. Research shows this does not build coping skills and can reinforce reliance on screens for emotional regulation.
It's actually the opposite effect.
So I think that's really valuable. It's easy practice to hand a kid a screen. I think all of us have said it at some point when we saw a parent hand it off. I've done it myself. It's not great practice.
It does have IEP 504 exceptions.
Oh, yes, thank you. And it does in this document say IEPs and 504 trump all general guidance. So if it is in the plan and it's there, it wins. Thank you for bringing that up. Keeping devices open during direct instruction, discussions, or collaboration work that does not require them.
Unacceptable.
I mean, that should be in the workplace too, but I go to many meetings where I do my work while the meeting's happening, and we know that there's better behavior than that. And then lastly, assigning digital busy work, for example, typing spelling words 5 times, or digital worksheets that replicate paper.
Right, handwriting.
So, anyway, I think it's great. I appreciate that they have them. I mean, I would ask the district, so is unacceptable mean that is like, hey, that's not good, or no, that is unacceptable, right? Like that is, if you're doing those, we're taking them away because you are not showing that you have that. All right, page 14, I'll try to go a little bit faster. This is their head nod to digital citizenship. Their goal is to be safe, be responsible, be kind, and be balanced. They have a guide for grade band. They have key focus areas and classroom integration ideas. They're telling you the expectation, they're arming you with a way to do it in all grades to become better digital citizens. Page 15, making it work, practical next steps. I really value this. The guide is not asking you to overhaul your practice overnight. It is asking you to be intentional. Here are manageable starting points. Start small, and then it goes through some things with a reminder there at the bottom. I value it's trying to move you today, over the semester, over time. We are building the muscle of being better stewards of technology. Page 16, we have had good comment on this. Actually, I thought the same thing. It does feel a little bit of placating parents, like I know how to respond to their concerns. I will say the high marks when it comes to response to parents and family. It does say,
Says be honest.
it does say, like when the problem is, I don't remember where it is, but when it is beyond your classroom. Sometimes concerns is bigger than your classroom. Send them to the district. That is ours to handle, and I like that they're not putting all the weight on the teacher. If it's a district policy, you probably need to be talking to people who run district policy, not beating up the teacher for their thing. So it does take you through. I think that was one of the positive things I saw. Another part it felt, if a concern goes beyond your classroom, there it is. If a question, I'm writing a question, is beyond the scope of your classroom, connect the family with your instructional coach, building administrator, or the Wichita Public Schools Information Service and Technology team member. You do not need to have all the answers. You just need to make sure families feel heard and know where to get them. I do like that they did say they need to be heard and also need to know where to get them, not just like, oh, I heard you, and then you go back to do whatever you want.
It was the example, so that really,
I agree.
I felt like
They
the
could be
examples
strong.
did reflect what the topic was.
Page 18 is then the appendix on research. I know we don't love it. There's a lot of strong opinions about this research in social science right now on screen time, but I personally value this ability to try to make space for, hey, there are reasonable people on both sides of this. Yeah. And they're trying to, look, what they didn't say is you have to believe us. They're just putting into the very same spot reasonable people who are disagreeing and saying, if you're a parent or a teacher, look, this is where you can go next. And then if you look on the back page, page 20, it has recommended further readings. I know many groups, and I've received personal emails, some people don't like the groups that are on that list because they feel like they are receiving money from, just all of that kind of things, but you can decide where to get your information, but they address that. So anyway, that's the tech plan. And
you have the answer, but how Wichita built this?
So Wichita created a committee, my understanding is that they created a tech committee that had parents and all of these groups on it, And then they worked through this again and again and again, and they were very proud of it. And they want it to be a tool, so they want it to be adaptive, and they said, of course, they're always happy to come and talk about it. They were open about, they did not build this and then take it out. So their way of reaching everyone was to bring them into the committee. So I just don't want to oversell, like, and then they asked every teacher in the district or whatever. The tech committee built this, and they had a very, a good representative sample is my understanding on that. So that's Wichita Public Schools. I'd like to give a shout out to some people who I think are doing it well. I think Wichita had the capacity to do it well. And whether we do it or not, anyone who's listening, Wichita said, please use ours to make a better education world for your kids. So, all right, with that said, that was the long overhaul of a bunch of kind of philosophy and good and bad. So now let's jump into these things. I'm on page 4. The rest of the time will be in this document that I provided you. I'm on page 4. We did the task, which is discuss Wichita. Here are some questions that we're going to ask. I'm just going to read through all the questions, and then we'll just open up generally for discussion. Does the Wichita Public Schools framework reflect the board's vision for balanced, high-quality instructional technology use? Does the framework strike an appropriate balance between instructional technology, student well-being, and local flexibility? Is the Wichita Public Schools framework sufficiently comprehensive to serve as a statewide guidance? Would endorsing an existing district's developed framework provide greater value than having KSDE create a separate guidance document? The discussion would be, does the board want to issue statewide guidance? So that's the question in this topic. Does the state want guidance? Let me just hit these really quick. Option 1, the board endorses the Wichita Public Schools Future Ready Learning with Purposeful Technology Framework as an example of balanced high-quality instructional technology use. This approach, I basically say, KSD does not try to repeat something that was already done well, right? They did it well. So basically, option 1, endorse Wichita. Option 2, KSD issues statewide guidance. So independent of Wichita, we come up with our own plan that is separate from this. We make sure what we want is in it. What page should we hit next? I just lost my, thank you. Oh, there it is, okay. So we hit that. There's kind of 2 bullets. The board directs KSD to develop statewide guidance, or the board directs KSD to establish and facilitate a task force, which would then develop guidance. Option 3, the board directs KSD to identify other districts, state or national plans. Option 4, the state board directs KSD to provide a template, a local policy, and toolkits for districts to develop their own plan. Okay. So I just want you to know those are the options. You don't have to say, pick an option, but we're trying to hear from the board what you're liking, where you want to be. So going back to the questions, does guidance matter? Is it valuable? Should we do it? If yes, who should do it and how should it be done? I would open that up for discussion if I can.
Okay.
Anyone at all? Anyone?
So this is a great document. And it's good probably for all school districts to look at. The thing that's missing in here, I don't see accountability. Because the 88 buildings that I've been through in the last 3.5 years, so I've been in Lebanon High School. They had this is before the cell phone policy. They had a policy of cell phone. So I talked to the principal while I'm going through the high school. Well, I can't. They can. If the teachers aren't doing it, I can't make it happen, which is that the superintendent needs to be involved with that. But then I walk by a classroom and that's in that same building, and outside the teacher had, here's the cell phone, here's what you do with the cell phone. And so I walk in the classroom and they didn't playing around. But then I go to Atchison Public Schools, and they have a principal up there don't play. And there was no this is way before, this is probably 4 years ago.
Yep.
So that doesn't measure, so their accountability with whatever policies they have, like this is awesome. This is good for each school district to look at. And what you said was important too, that they have parents involved in developing this, which is really, really, really important. So it has a lot of good things in it, but I didn't see much
So when,
accountability.
I just want to be clear on this, when you say the word accountability, you are saying, when it says, don't do these things, accountability means we have some mechanisms to make sure those things are not happening, and if they are being abused, whether by a student or a teacher, there is action
Or a
taken.
principal.
Or a
It's not
principal,
following
right?
through.
Okay, so when you're saying accountability, you're saying, when we say thou shall nots or those should nots, someone needs to hold them accountable. It's not just like, this is neat, do what you want. Is that correct? Am I-
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I agree with that on even a larger scale, because it's not even just this policy, a lot of the issues, well, even with the special education formal complaints. I'm wondering how much, either they don't have adequate policy, or are they actually following through and enforcing their policies? Because there, it can happen with bullying, it can happen with this, it can happen with, what is the mechanism for ensuring any policy
Yeah.
is being followed?
Okay,
Jim?
great.
I'm gonna kind of change the subject, and I'm gonna give a little history first.
Sorry, Jim. I just cut Debbie off.
No, that's okay, that's okay.
I thought you were done, I apologize.
There's a difference between guidelines and regulations.
Yes.
And in both cases where I've been involved in, like, task force for the legislature, the first one was the emergency safety intervention. The emergency safety intervention board had guidelines that were not enforceable. If they had regulations that were part of the accreditation system, it adds accountability. And I fear that if we don't take that step, that we are going to have, well, Connie was part of that process, that if we don't take the step of moving into the regulatory process, that it's going to be taken away from us.
I'm gonna push you. The next step is moving into that space. So if I can hold the container of, should we do guidance, and what you're saying is perhaps, and also, leave the and also if we can just for a minute.
Okay.
Does guidance matter from the state? Can I push you on that? Do you think it matters?
Yes, I think it matters.
Yes.
It matters in the field. It doesn't necessarily matter to the legislature.
And yes.
And the same thing happened with dyslexia.
Right.
You know, we had some things, but we didn't go far enough.
So in the space of accountability, Danny, that you're talking about,
Agree with me?
to me, first and foremost is implementation. Like you have guidance or you have policy. And my brain keeps going back to our whole literacy piece. Legislation was passed, but had we not acted, okay, well, big deal. Like unless something is done to know that the teachers have the proper training, they have the ability to teach literacy appropriately, and then we're stepping into the implementation. We've been in the training, we're still in the training, but we're stepping into implementation. So there's accountability, but really it's more than that. It's about how to. Do our teachers know how to? Do they have what they need district-wide to implement guidance?
I would say higher ed isn't teaching that.
Well, we still have tens of thousands of teachers in the field. So what can we do that's going to assist them, not penalize, not come up and put them in a corner, but assist them in a possibly a full shift? And it is happening. And, you know, we had McPherson in front of us. And we know districts are making a shift. So how do we operate in a space of support and assist? And yeah, maybe a little pushing in the process, because that's what we've done with literacy. It had to be done. We know that. So how do we sit in a space of, you're just gonna have to comply? Well, compliance doesn't get you what you want. It never will. So how do we truly help? How do we assist while pushing to an extent for the districts who might need it? I don't know. But with the right conversation in the middle of that, but we know we have a lot that is happening.
You gotta decide whether you want one size fits all, or are you gonna let each
Right.
district have their own say in what they do? If we're gonna give guidance, is it gonna be this is it, that's it? Or are you gonna say, here, these are guidance, if you wanna do a step further, like they decide, we want kids to have computers up to 5th grade, no computers in the classroom. That's, that's a local decision, so you gotta decide, one size fits all, or are you gonna let them do, like they have to turn in a report on the cell phones, are you gonna have them do something like that? That would be my opinion.
So what approach do you prefer?
I think what you'll end up having to do is one size fits all. Because you're gonna get somebody who'll just take it one step too far. And if you wanna do just one size fits all for K through 5, that's fine. And let them kinda have a little bit leeway later on, but you've gotta decide. This, kindergarten, no way. Or, you gotta, those are decisions we have to make.
Yes.
And there has to be consequences, I agree with Danny. You gotta follow, or if you don't, there's consequences, whatever the consequences are gonna be.
I've got way too many things in my head right now. Right. So, you've got as the leader goes, so goes the district. So if you think about what a smaller district looks like in terms of just their tech literacy, and then I think about my corner of the state where I've got Shawnee Mission, Blue Valley, and Olathe, and everybody right there. It's so different from district to district. And some of those districts have really bought into ideas that are being pushed by big tech. I come quickly back to the better we can educate teachers, the better off we're going to be. Because I think that if teachers had a whole year to sit down and spend doing a lot of the research that we've done and really dig into and read all the books that we've read and have the conversations that we've had, I think a lot of them would sit in a very different place. I think that they could approach that process in their classroom from a completely different perspective when they're thinking about what do kids really need to be experiencing in my classroom every day to be good learners and to be hitting some of those achievement goals that we keep talking about. So, yes, how do we get to high quality? And frankly, at this point, I can't say I trust every district in the state to just make their own decisions. I probably trust some of them, but I need a list and a rubric, and I don't want to be responsible for that. So that's my long-winded, one-size-fits-all probably has to be the path.
Okay.
And I just want to tag on there real quick. High-quality PD for teachers is paramount, because I think there is way too much that they do not understand about what's happening on device and what's going on with each of their students in the classroom. And we've got to do a better job of educating them so they can make better choices.
So, listening, and thinking about my recent experiences in school districts and visiting classrooms. And I think if we can push ourselves out of the deficit frame of thought into really acknowledging in a positive way what, in my opinion, the majority of our Kansas teachers, building leaders are promoting, then we could present something like this as a model and say, we know you're doing great things and we expect that you're going to be greater because you're gonna create something like this for your district. I think about all the schools that we bring in that show us the wonderful things we are doing. And I think sometimes we think, those are the only 15 schools in the whole state of Kansas doing great things, but that is, in my experience, so far from true. I think there might be 15 that are doing crazy stuff, and then all the rest are really focused on taking good care of children based on the budget that they have, the resources that they have, the quality of the buildings that they're in, some that don't have strong internet access. This wouldn't even be all that relevant. So, I don't know, I'm just thinking, if we can push beyond thinking nobody's gonna do this and teachers are gonna rebel and principals won't follow, and really think, no, the majority will. and we have resources in place to help those who are kind of struggling, and if we tied it to KISA, you know, that might also inspire people to say, okay, this is part of our accreditation, let's do it. So, I don't know, that's just my perspective as somebody who's been in buildings all the time. In fact, next week I was sharing, I'm gonna be back in the public school setting, sharing with new teachers.
Oh.
Because, yes, but I love that, and that's why I'm there, you know, that's why I'm present. And what I see is not always what I think people think is going on, so. I probably extended my 3 minutes, but that is just, I know, I need to stand up for the people who I know are doing great work
100%.
with conscience.
And we need that voice, so thank you very much.
To your question, how would you see this? I do not think that, I don't agree that it has to be one size fits all or let it be just local control. I do think that there's a middle ground, and because of organizations I've belonged into that have really good national organizations that allow that local chapter kind of control, the way they did it, I really thought was impressive. So what they had was basically a model policy. In that model policy, and it would have been bylaws, but in that model, they would have things that were in all caps. Those things were required to be in the bylaws or in the policy. But we do have the power to enforce through the KISA the laws of the state, regulations. So to have a regulation that you will have policy in your district is not taking away that control. They can, how they manage their policy is their own. We're providing a model policy that has had a lot of thought put into it, a lot of education put into it, and there are things that are in caps that have to be in there because we know the regulation and the law, you know. But that is a way I think that kind of ties that one size fits all with that local control, and kind of gives both empowered. That's where I would go.
So I like this. I'm gonna hold off on policy, and you weren't saying, but hold on, because we're gonna get to that topic next, right? My question would be, does Wichita Public Schools plan reflect a model policy that we, the state, would like to say that? Or, and maybe you're saying this, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, so I'll let you respond to it. Or one of these options here is create a template.
I would probably not get down into the devil's in the details like they are. You
Okay.
know what I'm saying? I would be a little bit more general because otherwise you are getting into that.
Do you see that more as than a template? Like we
I
give a
think-
template of what a model policy
I think more than a
discusses.
template, less than this necessarily. I think I would be heavily on the opt-in. I would probably fall with Melanie in that, I think, I would be saying that, and you would be knowing how to say it better, but that we don't have the longitudinal data on the technology use and the effects on the brain and the development. So we all know that the earlier the development in a child, the more risk there is in that developmental damage. And, you know, a teenager can probably absorb a lot more than a 5-year-old, right? So if we put into our model policy that there's none, you know, K through 2 is what you said, whatever the group comes up with, you know, if there's none, then that's still just a model policy. But my experience in the other organization I'm talking about is most of us chapters took the model bylaws, you know, but we did have the power to change it if it wasn't working for us. And that was, I thought, a really good balance. I lost my book.
A lot that I would push forward is what we've already said, other members have said. And I like the idea of us really taking responsibility of giving the local districts a template, or whatever you want to call it. This is wonderful. And let them own it. And it's kind of a dual purpose, because if we go with like your time frame of getting this out by November, then when legislators come into session next year, it's like it's already done. It's a done deal. And I think it's really important that we take a lead on it and that we give this type of information of a guideline, template, whatever, to local districts and say, you do something before the end of the year, or by 2027, then it's a done deal, and they will own it. I just like that idea, and I think they can figure that out at the local level, what works for their community.
So back to your question, what do
I'm hearing,
we want to do?
I'm hearing, guidance is good and we want guidance. I'm projecting a little bit of what I believe, so I'm not trying to, right? Having Wichita's as a check this out is a good thing. And then perhaps having a template or something with it that says a good plan has these things in place. So you're pulling back just a little bit and saying these are some things that are in place in a good plan.
And tying it to key.
This,
We'll get there. Did I say we'll get there?
can I just add that this is wonderful for Wichita, it's very detailed, but I'm not sure that every district would want this many pages.
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
Should they have that many pages?
That's not that much.
I think.
I mean, Wichita will let them rip it off, right? Like, so they don't have to create their own. They could literally just
Yeah, yeah.
put their district's name on it.
No,
So
I think-
is it good to have those domains?
Right, I think, you know, the way it's laid out is beautiful. And if a local board likes this and wants to just adopt the whole thing, wonderful.
Okay, I'm gonna challenge us here, right? Because we are saying, should we give them guidance? What we're not, I'm guilty of this, what we're starting to say is, and what should they have? What should we give districts? The next conversation is what should they have? Does that make sense?
Yes.
So what should the State
Okay.
Department give, what
Okay.
what does the State Board want the State Department to give districts?
How much work would it be to rewrite something that's done really well? I mean, do we want to spend the time and money to rewrite something that's really well? I think this is something we can use.
That's what we're here for.
I'm not, the question is, a question we have is, what in this do you like or you want different when the state gives guidance, right? We're not trying to silence anyone. It's like, yes, this falls short in these areas. If we're giving guidance, these areas need to be addressed that Wichita did not.
Jim?
I really like this document. I think we need to use the guideline, but I think then we need to have some discussion about modifications and templates and all that's fine with me. I think as Maya Angelou just said, when you know better, do better. We need, as part of our responsibility, is to help people know better. I've already identified the fact that I was an early adopter because I didn't know any better. Well, now I know better. So we have to be the leaders to make sure that people understand that there are negative consequences of the overlay. There are significant negative consequences. And now that we know that, we have to communicate that. And I like this plan. I think that there's some modification. I agree with Melanie about
Yeah,
so.
there could be
To
some
give everyone time, is there anyone that thinks that we, the State Department of Ed or the State Board, should not give this out as something to see? Is there anyone that feels like this should not be sent out from ours? It is public, but by us sending it is kind of a head nod of endorsement. Anyone concerned with that? Okay,
Is
so,
there any way we can improve on it?
so the next question is, what do they not cover, or what do they cover that you really want to see in there? Okay, Melanie?
So I want to start by saying, if you look at the front page, it says a teacher's guide to balanced, high-quality instructional technology use. And I think this document is very good at what it says it wants to do. However, there is a gap that this document doesn't fill. And so we also have standards. And I don't know how many people in this room will agree with me, but I will just say that our kids are not learning how to type. And they're not learning how to use the computers that they're being handed, and I'm just gonna focus on high school here for a minute. I will squeeze in an anecdote that I heard in Wichita, in that room, where a middle school teacher told me kids are coming from elementary, they've been on iPads, and I give them, when they get computers in that middle school, they don't know what to do with them because they've been swiping, and they've never had access to a mouse, and they've never typed on a keyboard. There's a disconnect there, but we have typing standards and we have handwriting standards. But because we do not assess against those standards, kids aren't being taught how to type. Please find me a school where they're teaching typing on a regular basis. basis, and where kids are maybe even like competing against each other for who can type how many words a minute. Like, these are really important things to me. I keep talking about computational thinking and how that needs to be part of core curriculum, because if we want kids to be good at computing, like, I'm a self-taught software engineer, full stack. That means that I had to learn how to plug all of those holes in a network and how to construct software, and a lot of that was reading and researching and knowing what questions to ask. I want kids to be able to do those things. I want them to be good problem solvers, and I think that if we're gonna talk about technology, that's gotta be a core component of that. I don't know what belongs in this booklet versus what do we need to do to look at standards and then make sure that those standards are really being met in a meaningful way, elementary, middle, and high school. And then my other thing, sorry, probably over time, IT doesn't come up in this at all.
Right.
And we have a huge safety, security, privacy, controls for parents. That's a giant gaping chasm that we're not talking about.
That was great. I heard 2 actionable items. One is this whole IT security piece of, and then the other one is we do have standards. And so connecting standards to this reminds people where to go, what are those standards, because as a state board, your job is to set the standards, and then we want to make sure people are teaching.
I think that's a huge point.
Dr. Newton's been terribly quiet, and I'm just curious what's going on in her head. And you talk about,
She's over there working.
these guys, how can we tie this together with what?
Michelle.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Oh,
Michelle.
Michelle, I'm sorry.
Can we go Michelle real quick, and then Renee if you want to?
I mean, obviously technology is here, but technology should be looked at as a tool, not the goal. Because I'm gonna tell you, parents are gonna say, if somebody needs to provide me evidence that shows that, refutes the evidence that we already know, that it reduces comprehension, it reduces retention, this is technology. Technology-based learning. It increases anxiety, it increases depression, even suicide ideation. So should we have that in there as a pencil? It's a tool, that's a tool, and we learn so much. We know that using that brain, that connectivity to the paper, we know that actually, there's evidence, there's years of evidence on that. We don't have the evidence, so a parent's gonna walk in and say, please show me the evidence that shows me that technology-based learning works. And it's gonna work for my child. So, and show me, give me an option that I can do paper, pencil, and textbooks. My kid can turn pages, go back to the page, and data isn't recorded on them spending too much time on one page. If you have computers in the school, which they change frequently, apps change frequently, go to type. It's not connected to each child. It's everybody's on it, using it, so they're learning through that tool. They're learning the tool rather than data being connected to that kid while they're learning that tool. The other stuff that's gonna show up, the benchmarks are gonna show up through that learning, through the paper, through the books, through the homework, through the research, and it's gonna be feedback given to the teacher immediately, and that parent immediately, weekly, like it used to be for years and years and years. Now we find technology, and the evidence is there that shows all these declining things, and the parents are gonna wanna see, show me where it works, because we don't have that evidence that it works.
Michelle, I'm hearing you that in the guidance, we will articulate a statement about technology as a tool and the strengths and weaknesses of that tool.
Yeah, I mean, show them that it should be used as a tool. Like she's saying, you can learn so much from typing rather than tapping. I mean, you're tap, because they're swiping. So, but if they're actually writing, that's going to, we have evidence that shows that there's retention there, that there's creativity going on, that they're using all faculties of the brain, and they're retaining it because they're retaining knowledge, rather than just doing something or processing information and then forgetting about it within a week.
So bringing up the standards, which is our overall purview, how can we take maybe this document in some form and put into it the standards of the typing and the handwriting and learning how to use a tool?
I do think we may be making an assumption
Okay.
that keyboarding isn't taught. So I'm just pushing back on that a little bit, just from my past district. I mean, it was taught with the races of timed,
because I heard two different things and it sounded like you guys were mixing. I heard you saying exactly what you were saying, because I experienced that. I took typing and secretarial kind of stuff in school back in the 70s, right? And so I did not take what you were saying as putting it into all the classroom and part of the educational process as much as a separate skill that was being taught. Did I not understand? Were you talking about teaching typing as a separate skill or having it done in the classroom and that skill being taught because they're using it in the classroom?
I would say that if you're going to hand a student a computer and say you are expected to use this tool, you need to know how to use the tool. It's akin to giving a kid a car and saying, here, drive to school.
Right.
And you haven't taken them out for driver's ed, they've never been behind the wheel, they haven't learned the rules of the road, but here, have it, go have fun with that.
But did you understand my question? Are you talking about separate, just education that teaches that skill? That doesn't necessarily take it into the classroom and affect how they're learning because they're on a keyboard.
Well, but I think if I heard Michelle correctly, she's advocating for putting pen, pencil to paper because
Right.
that is part of the learning process and engages a different part of your brain. I'm saying kids need to learn how to type if they're going to be using computers, and we have standards for that, but not every district is teaching typing.
And what I'm saying is those are two separate things that could be both required. They don't have to be combined. You don't have to learn the typing through your educational classes. You don't have to learn typing in English. You could have just a separate typing skills taught because it is a separate requirement in KISA or wherever you put it. That's what I'm saying is I don't think that those have to be
Are
mixed.
you tracking?
Well, we do have, just to sparse out, we do have standards, and so we follow the standards. I think placing the standards in here is a valuable thing. We do have, and I think what I'm also hearing is a separate thing, which is, let's talk about technology as a tool, having a space to talk about. A tool chops wood, it also chops off hands, right? So there is a value and a danger of it, and so how do we use tools correctly and what is the kind of use there? What are other things in guidance that this does not hit that needs to? I'm trying not to exhaust us. This is the first topic of 3. So what else? This is the state giving guidance.
I have another tiny note, again, that came from the Wichita meeting. Translation tools and access to those tools for the populations that need them. I think there are going to be a handful of exceptions, and we probably need to start looking at what does that exceptions list look like for a second grader who just came here for whatever reason and has very little English. What are we doing for that student?
How many students, how many different languages were in Kansas City, Kansas?
About 63, and you have almost 10,000 students that speak.
And we have many that come over from another country directly.
Yes.
And so what I'm hearing, if I can expand it, you can reject it, an accessibility section. And then accessibility, potentially break it down, accessibility for language, for speech and other things, and then still give a head nod to the 501 and the IEP of 504, thanks. 501 is a district. Amazing. Okay. We're gonna get into should we do a policy? Anything else on the state giving guidance to districts of, hey, this works? Because what I'm gonna propose is the Kansas State Department of Education put a framework together or something as a receive item next time that we then, not a, yep, looks good, but just as, again, the framework, the saying, I'm tracking this, this is having my thoughts, I'm feeling we're getting the right place, so eventually we can vote on it.
Can we work on it here?
We don't have time.
You don't think so?
No.
Could I propose this? We could put it together, I don't know if this is allowed, so if I'm breaking the rules, someone tell me. We could put it together and then track change it and send it out to, or we can't do that, that sounds
Can't do
illegal.
that. That would be.
Sorry.
Do it together.
I say with a smile because that was innocent. I
I
know.
mean, you could put together a document and send it out to all the board members. Each board member separately could do their things and send it back
That's
to
true.
get updated before the September meeting. But I'm afraid track changes would be seen as a serial.
It's a serial thing.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if that would help, but then we could get feedback, and then next time we could go over, here's the feedback we received, and we can talk about that.
What could we, so let's take an hour run at it and at least get some foundation, maybe, because we might vet out some basic topic outline, kind of we might figure out the template in an hour, and then you guys are filling in the blanks.
Let's run through a little this is guidance. Then we have to talk about, do we want local policy? Like, we've got pieces to get through. So let's continue and see what our timing is.
The other thing I would just say, and I'm not trying to placate, is I'm taking generally their topics, grade bands, what high quality tech is, parental, digital citizenship, plus standards, plus IT, plus a tool, tech as a tool, plus accessibility. So in some ways I mentally am doing that. I'm not saying that's the right thing to do, but I'm trying to track what are those things you would want in a framework.
I guess what I'm wanting is, I'm wanting to see something set up more as a model policy,
Okay.
that they could actually just adopt into their policy that addresses these things, and it can even reference, you know, a guidance that you guys are putting together. But that I would like to see that model policy that the schools could adopt and have that kind of, these are the must-haves in the policy, and the rest can be changed as they see their local.
You're just a
needs
step
are.
ahead. That is literally the next topic.
Okay,
You're
that's
just a
what,
step ahead.
that's why I'm like, please, can we do this, okay?
So that's the next topic. All right, anything else on this?
I don't want a model policy.
Okay, that's the next
I
topic.
haven't been on a.
But that's the
board.
next topic.
So,
This is the state giving guidance, then I think we should take a break, get all excited, and then jump into the, should the state require a policy? And if so, is there a model policy? And if so, is there a framework? Right, we're gonna go through that, but I'm keeping you out of the policy debate for a minute. Anything else in the state giving guidance?
Again, support like back, what's our time frame on this? Because if they're just constantly sixth grade through eighth grade, constantly this all computers 24/7, and they don't do the writing part. What type of time frame are we talking about here that we're going to give them?
The policy?
Time to adopt, I mean, like, to come up with an option if they say, we're not doing technology, a parent says, I'm not doing technology, what's the backup, what's my option? And does the teacher know how to do anything besides working through technology?
So
Do they have those backup, the books and stuff, do they have the backup?
if I could just say, that may be a better question for when you know what you have, because what you're asking them to do will determine how long it's gonna take to do that. The other thing you could do is you could require a policy be written by such a time the policy could be, and we'll get these things done by this time. Great example is if you currently don't have textbooks, well, you may need to have part of their 7-year cycle to get all those things done. So you may, after you decide what you're gonna ask them to do, now we can get into logistics of, well, what's a reasonable time frame to have that done, and what are the steps along the way?
Okay. This isn't a speak now, forever hold your speech, but I also can't do a serial Cora problem. But, coma. If you can send me, if you want to extend this, you can personally send me an email of other things you would like to see in guidance. So over the next month, you're talking to families, teachers, parents, and you know what, I forgot this moment, please send it. We're not trying to stop conversation. And then our goal, at least next time, is to have model guidance for you guys to look at. And then again, in that moment, you could say, nope, you missed the mark, we don't want it at all, or you could say adjust, or you could say adopt. Is that generally okay?
Are you saying guidance or regulation?
Guidance. Next is regulate. Well, next is policy. So this is simply the state saying, hey, this is a good idea, you should look at it. Hey, this is really gonna help you, we like this. So just what should the state do to help districts? Okay? Sorry if I'm overstepping. I think we should take a break.
Oh, sure.
Just so
And
we.
then we're gonna jump into policy.
Okay, then coming back from
As
this,
in,
should the state board of education require every district to have a policy? If yes, should we mandate what is in that policy? That is the next conversation.
All of them. That's a loaded question. Should we mandate what's in the policy or some items?
Yeah, items, I meant items, yes.
That's
Pull
a
it
way
back.
big difference.
Items, not everything, okay? So go take a break and live life and then come back and. Again, if you can hit the gym, if you can hit the gym.
We're gonna get into conversation about if, should we, all the things when it comes to policy. So, Dr. Steele.
Okay, if I believe right, we're on page 7.
6.
If I believe right, we're on page 6. Guys, come on. Yep. Well, I had option 2. Yep, 6. I should have stapled. Yes. Okay, next time the commissioner will have his stapled. Okay. So I'm going to try to frame this and then again back into this, right? Not trying to wear people out. We want to hear from everyone, and we want to. I think this is the harder conversation than the first one, if I'm being honest. So I'm really curious to see the time we need and take on this. So the question at hand, the task is to determine whether the Kansas State Board of Education should require each local education agency or a district to adopt a policy related to instructional technology and student devices. Okay? Before we get started on this, I think there's some background information that is very valuable. So welcome Ashley into the conversation.
Hello.
Ashley, let's just play.
Let's say who Ashley is.
Oh, sorry, thank you. Ashley is our general counsel for the agency, and she also does not give legal opinions to the board, but does talk to the board, and those positions work there, okay? So I just want to be very clear here of looking at some levers when it comes to policy. If we require a policy, generally speaking, and I think lawyers can fight about it, we would need to regulate.
So if you create a policy, from what I've heard, that you want to have, be enforceable, then I would say yes, you would need to regulate it. If there's some teeth that you want within it, it would need to be a regulation. Guidance, I would say, is, something lesser, something that gives some flexibility, and the board may not have the teeth to enforce.
So I'm going to say a statement and then you will correct me.
Okay.
Okay? We have more tools than regulation. So a statute is what the legislature does, and they can create statute, and that is the law. We have the authority to regulate, but it does go through a specific process and takes time.
Yeah.
Like
Over a year.
Okay, over a year. At our worst, we were 4 years. Not our worst, sorry. At how long I've heard it take was 4 years. I'm not trying to put blame on anything, but it took a long time, okay? That is not the only tool. We do have the ability to post things online. We could collect information and post who has them. We wouldn't have to regulate, so that's a little bit about using transparency as an option. We're going to collect from every district if they have a plan. We would not have to regulate on that.
Right.
Admittedly, and I'm not trying to be a jerk, it's a little bit of public shaming, right? Bring it to surface because it's very clear. So a faster path is that. There's also our ability so we can do surveys, we can collect information, we can post information, or we could regulate. That is where the real teeth are. And that's where, if you regulated, it would be most likely, my assumption right now, not speaking as the lawyer, is you would put that regulation within our keys of regs. And that is what would give that very enforceable authority, that if a district comes and says, we have regulation on it, and that would be settled through the legal process. Okay? So there are more than one ways, I think, to kind of require it. I'm not trying to be cheap, but just trying to show there are other options. A thing I have found that goes awry in regulation is we think this is the greatest idea ever, but I'm going to be honest, I'm now looking at regulations from past boards that I'm like, man, I really wish they wouldn't have done that, and now we're trying to get them out of regulation. So I think we got to be very judicious about what we're going to put in regulation, because it takes forever to get in, and it's not the easiest to get out. And so today may be the most important thing, but I don't know if that's always the right path. And regulation is generally a compliance measure. So we are just checking a box that they have one. I would ask you in one of our questions of, have the other regulations changed practice quite a bit? Now, I'm not anti-reg, but I think we have to be realistic by requiring a policy does what?
Correct.
Right? So we'll sit with that as one of the questions. And then I had another one, but it's gone. So here we go. Here are some discussion questions to open it up. What impact, if any, would requiring the policy have on student development, student outcomes, and district practices? What evidence do we have that requiring a district policy changes district practice or student expectations? Experience, I can read things. No, really, no, thank you. Would the anticipated benefit of a statewide policy requirement justify the associated implementation and administrative cost to monitoring compliance?
Right.
I would say this, and if I'm probably over speaking, I've heard a lot of opinions about the cell phone ban the legislators have done. I'm not trying to poke at them, but the version of enforcement, or do we want to turn the does the state board want to turn the state agency into an enforcement mechanism where we're trying to figure out how on earth we get our staff in to really see it's happening, right? So there's some level of, we can check a box, but turning that, there's a lot to saying we're going to require all these things, and my question is, who's going to enforce that?
Isn't the enforcement tool accreditation?
It would be, but I think the question for me would be, how do we know it's happening? How do we know what, like, we can check there's a policy. How do we know the district is following the policy? And that could be a
Parent complaints?
complaint process.
I would think the complaint process, if somebody brings a complaint that we're not following our policy, that comes to us, and then that actually does affect the accreditation or puts it in whatever status you put it into to deal with it.
So that would be I'll be honest, it can be tough, because if one parent says one thing, how do you decide? But yes, a complaint process where
Because
someone
that's
do
gonna
that.
require an investigation, obviously.
Next, maybe it's the fourth bullet. If a policy is required, to what extent should the board establish a minimum expectation versus allowing districts to determine the details locally? What support, if any, should KSDE provide to assist districts in developing and implementing a meaningful policy? I think we talked a little bit about that in the last one. If a policy is required, what, if any, accountability or monitoring mechanism should be in place? So just gonna hit very high level. Option one that I'm suggesting to the board is require a district to adopt a policy. That would be the bare minimum of requirement. Like, yep, you just have to have one. We need to have on file that you have one or some mechanism there. That is page 6. After page 6 goes to page 7. See what I did there? I counted.
You took math.
Option 2, establish a minimum state expectation for local flexibility. So in my mind, option 2 is, so I'll make sure I'm not. Option 2 would be kind of similar to what you're talking about, is we want a policy, but here are the 4 things we want you to speak to in that policy. You have to address parents, you have to address kindergarten, you have to write some form of that. There's a lot in here, I'm just trying to get things well. So we would be defining the minimum components, correct, thank you. Okay, all right.
The thing I want to point out under your option 2 is the last bullet under potential required components, unacceptable uses. Somewhere along the line, while this talks about what's not great or what's not acceptable, I would probably lead into the prohibited almost. You know, like it's a little strong verbiage like we talked about. This is a really bad thing.
So you're
Don't
saying
do it.
require district to have a policy, and in that policy explicitly discuss the unacceptable use.
If
You're
we're
putting
going
that.
to go there,
Okay.
I'm just playing it in
Yep.
the field.
Great.
I'm not necessarily going there.
So I'd love to hear this, and then let's challenge each other to
Yes.
walk down a path a little bit, and then really ask ourselves, like, this is all neat, right? This is policy making,
You're
but.
talking like that.
Right, but more strong,
Right.
stronger, like we were saying. Yes, exactly.
Okay, Melanie?
I agree with what Debbie just said. Requiring a policy does what? For me, it creates some transparency for parents. I think we need to remember why we're here.
Yeah.
First and foremost is the students. But I saw a horrifying to me headline last week that was something to the effect of, why is all of this device stuff just now bubbling up? And I'm like, well, wait a minute. As a parent, I've been screaming about some of these issues for nearly a decade now. So having a document that parents can access and know what to expect from their district would be huge. I'd love for it to be by grade band. I'd love for it to include the terms and conditions for device use, the whole policy that parents sign off on when they enroll at the beginning of the school year. I went looking for one this week and I couldn't find it anywhere. I Googled, I looked on the website, I'm like, I'm sure that if I dig some more, I can find it, but I can't find it right now. It'd be nice if it was all in one place. And, I wanna highlight too that it should be very explicit about the, costs associated with accepting those devices. Because districts tend to refer to the charging cables and bricks as consumables, because they get consumed so quickly, they get destroyed by a student during the school year, and then they have to be replaced, and parents need to know what they're getting into.
Do you mean by
money-wise.
cost, sorry, I'm just slowing this, like cost would be if my student breaks the device, it is upon the parent to.
If your student uses the device.
The parent is a student user. Talk more about cost. Are you literally talking money?
I'm literally talking money, yeah, so yes, if your student gets mad and throws a device in the classroom, say, are you on the hook for that? What does that look like? And then if they're in high school, let's say that only high schoolers are taking home laptops. At the end of the school year, they turn in that laptop and maybe a key is broken. The screen might have a little chunk out of the corner, or their charging cable's all used up because they've been dragging it back and forth all year, and their brick is all used up. So now you're gonna get a bill for that.
Okay. Other things, I think that, let's build what we wanna see in a plan, then I'm gonna push you all to abandon what you just said to see, and then if it sticks, it sticks, and if not, then it's like, all right, Danny.
And the potential required components could include, I don't see anything in anything that says we have parents involved in helping us make these decisions.
Okay.
Family engagement.
So what I'm hearing is a family engagement piece. Some district needs to write to how they inform the family, engaged with the family, something around that.
Or the family involved when they're doing this.
When they're making the policy.
Yeah, when they're making policy.
There's a difference between family engagement in the policy and having families involved in writing the policy.
Both. We need both.
In the
I
policy.
think we should read it. It says ensuring families understand technology use expectations and are partners in supporting healthy and effective technology use. So maybe not just supporting that use, but supporting development and use.
That's what Wichita did.
Right, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
you could just add that little bit in there, and I think you would have what you're looking for.
Gotcha.
Okay. Other things you wanna see in this policy before I push you all around?
I like option 2, because I think it gives the flexibility, but also accountability with,
Framework.
framework here. I feel really strongly about putting some of those, safeguards in there for the younger kids, no screens. And I just stay up front, I like the idea of taking a school device home, even if you're high schooler.
Okay. Thoughts? Okay.
I would be the one who would lose her computer in the bathtub or something. I broke a whole television set at the Air Force Academy.
When you look at the minimum, state expectations, we're owning this too as a department. We're giving guidance, we're gonna help you develop something good that works for you locally, but you're responsible.
So I like that, right? Because in
Yeah.
part, it's like, if we're gonna tell you that we have these required areas, we will give you best practices on these required areas so you're not left to dry, right? Like a small district to not overwhelm.
And if we don't do something like that and own it, the legislature will own it. So we're
But
deterring that.
But I would push back on that and say we cannot operate in that fear. Like,
Well-
what's best for students and parents and teachers and the whole gamut without,
Yeah.
because I've sat there too.
But not in a.
I know, but we have a history, and
I know, we do.
we need
We do.
to be
But,
proactive and own it.
but the state education as a whole needs to feel like we are walking through this because it's real and not because otherwise you get because the legislature's gonna do what they do. We're hopeful that they would take anything we're doing and recognize that there's work being done and it matters. But I also don't wanna lean too hard just because.
No,
That's what I'm saying.
No, but it is a wise thing because we've seen with the cell phone policy is that the local boards are hungry for, I think, stronger support from us.
Yes.
And at the same
So.
time, and that protects them from the legislature getting that pushback and feeling they have to make laws because we've given them the support in place that kind of, we're that balance. We are the balance between those two, and I think that, so to
That's
your
why I
point,
like
I think that's what
option
you were saying, is that we're providing something to them that gives them a layer of support and they have more involvement than if the legislature has to take it because we didn't do it, then that's, it's not out of fear, it's just out of, that's the reality of the setup of the system. Yep, I got you.
I don't think I said it earlier, but we need to make sure that the locals invite the legislatures into their school districts, the local, because I'm not sure how many legislatures have actually ever been in a school since they left.
I've encouraged, will continue to encourage you to invite always, agreed. Okay, so I'm just very transparent, so I try to be in this world, right? So I was leaning this direction personally, and then I had some good people say a couple things, just being real, no bad actors. AI makes really good plans, right? So what? We have a lot of plans on file, how are they doing, right? We have mentoring plans, all these other plans, like, will this better practice, or does this just make us feel good about something? And then, admittedly, having someone else make the plan, right? So there's just this idea of, it makes us feel like we're doing something. Does practice change because it's in place? And one could say it doesn't, but being transparent and having a place where parents can find it, that's not bad. It's just, we always gotta own the space we're in. Why do we want a plan? Is it to change practice, or is it, so it made me step back just a little bit on these plans of like, okay, another thing I heard, I asked superintendents, I've asked about 25 across the state. One said, I will leave them silent, but you'll know where they are, at least where they're not. Stop putting Johnson County's problems on the rest of us.
Oh, no doubt.
So one said, one has said,
Sorry.
one has said, right, I'm just trying not to, maybe I shouldn't have said that, I got a little more energy than I needed. One said, I have not, a superintendent, you can believe it or not, but the superintendent said to me, I have not had a single parent come up with this. I've never had a parent complain about the way we're doing this. So why are you doing that? And a couple other ones said to me, you keep asking us to focus on instruction, and then you keep bombarding us with all these other things now that I have to focus on. So how about we focus on instruction, or you can have us do 1,000 different things to try to get to an end result, right? So I actually heard strong winds. I will, just to be clear, heard other superintendents say, I wouldn't do a plan. If you do a plan, I would be specific about what you want in it, so we don't have 1,000 different things that mean nothing to anyone, right? So people were all over the place, but those were some of the hot button issues when I thought about plan. I was like, oh, okay. So anyway, just throw that grenade for a minute, and you're welcome to respond.
Yeah.
Melanie, I saw your hand.
Well, so he told me this yesterday, and it hit me really hard. And I realized very quickly, oh, but wait, before Johnson County parents, there were Silicon Valley parents, right? Like, we heard people saying, well, in Silicon Valley, they don't put their kids on devices, even though they're the ones that are designing and creating and building these devices. It goes back to being an education challenge, right?
Yes.
The more you know, the better you do. So that's all. It's not a Johnson County problem, and I imagine that district is doing a great job, and that's why they don't have complaints.
Yeah,
Perhaps, that's how
I know.
I know.
I didn't look into it. I just heard the statement, so I don't want to say one way or the other.
So perhaps if we can keep that in mind as we are preparing whatever we'd offer to districts, we can be as specific as possible in a generalized way, and maybe hit what's in the middle, and then let the people who are on the fringe add in whatever they think is necessary. Because I can really imagine the superintendent saying, you've got us doing all this other stuff, now we gotta get together a focus group to create a plan that, we don't have time, it's gonna take us a whole year to tap into every school site council to get their input. Parents haven't been complaining about it, but now that you're bringing it up, okay, what do you want us to do? And that could prolong our ability to really get something out there that can be supported by our staff in a way that is reasonable for every single district. So, I would maybe think if we could take the time and put our efforts into creating something generic enough that somebody could pick it up and say, we'll just use this, but yet leave space for someone else to say, but we'd rather take this out, or, we'd rather add this in. That might help them as far as time.
And remembering that we have districts with less than 100 kids.
Yeah.
And we have Wichita with 45,000
Yeah.
plus.
Yeah.
Like,
I do
One
think,
size does not
Yeah.
fit all, so we have to consider a lot of things.
Because this goes to what I said before, this isn't just the only subject area that we have policy that I'm seeing, that the complaints I'm getting from parents are not because there's no policy, it's because the schools aren't following through on the policy. And that's a lot of the complaints I'm getting, so I do think that it's not just for this, but I think the mechanism I think we're gonna have a mechanism for complaints to come to this level, that if the local boards aren't going to follow the policy they make, because again, why have the policy if you're not going to actually do it or ensure it's being done? That there has to be a mechanism for that to come back. I just, because otherwise what's the point in having it, if bullying, I think, because bullying's in statute, and Betty has provided a really great flow chart for bullying, and I have seen things that failed that flow chart that never made it past the local board and the school, and I ended up hearing about a child with a broken orbital bone in her eye, because she was dealing with unresolved bullying. So it's not just this subject, it's how is policy being ensured that the parents, like Melanie was saying, when a parent has that piece of paper that says, okay, this is a policy, and it says, we're not gonna do this, but we do. What happens? So where does the parent go?
If I can respond to that real quick, they go to their local board.
But the
It's
local
not
board's
us,
not doing
it's-
it.
But
It's
we're,
a local
that's not who
issue.
we are, yeah.
They elect their local board hires the superintendent. Like, that's
I
the-
don't agree. I think that if the local board is not enforcing their policy, then that becomes, I think, an accreditation thing.
if I can not shut that off, but that does sound like a conversation you want that's bigger than this. But I understand why this is in it, which is what happens when the local board doesn't enforce their policy, and does the state have a role in that? Do they, should they? So I'm not trying to do that, but I am trying to keep us moving.
Yes.
A couple things I both heard and wanted to hear, so I'm gonna say it back. One is suggestions versus requirements. Okay, so I heard, I'm not saying you said this, but you could say, the state board could come out and say, we strongly suggest that everyone have a policy. Or you could say, we're requiring a policy, and we suggest these are the things within the policy. Or you could say, or you can go beyond, or you could say, just trying that, we're requiring a policy, these are the things that are required within the policy, and we encourage others to hit other topics as best for their community, such as, and make a list. Anyway, respond back to that, but I'm trying to hear how you're talking about suggest versus require.
So I would present it in a way that I would think would be relatable. And I would say something like, due to the acknowledgement of nationwide of technology and how it impacts often negatively in a school setting, the State Board of Education is requiring that every school district have a plan supported by a district level policy to address the use of technology on district issued devices in the classroom. The State Department of Education is offering this template based on something one of our state districts has created, and it is one that you can use and then offer the variables. Our timeline to receive your plan is whatever date, and our staff at the Department of Education is ready to help support you in creating a plan that you can present by this date, and then offer contact information for the individuals who would do that. I think the cleaner and the clearer it is communicated, the more districts will recognize their own benefit in participating in a way that is collaborative, And then also, it won't look like they're throwing something new on us that we've got to come up with. Here's who we contact, here's what it should look like, and we can just take this and put our name on it and turn it back
I'm gonna try to tear off, do we want a policy, and then what is in it, okay? So, we're not voting. And who wants to see the district, right? I wanna hear from you. You want to see the state require a policy from every district. I'd like to hear just that. Don't go deeper into the details. Just, are you ready to require districts to all have a policy?
So, Jim?
I'm conflicted, but the reason I'm conflicted is because if we don't require something, it'll be done to us. We talked about not being feared, but that's real. So,
This is not, right, you change your opinion, but right now your confliction is leaning what direction?
well, I used to be a superintendent, and I would resent that, by the way. So, but that's been 12 years ago, so. I'm leaning toward yes.
Okay.
And very, 51, not 49.
It's a swing vote, all right.
Might either be 50.5 and 49.5, right?
Let's say something just about policy in general.
Yes.
So if everybody's gonna do the right thing, you don't need policy.
That's correct.
Okay. Problem is, not everybody agrees on what the right thing is.
Correct.
What you would be saying by requiring a policy is that you need to think about this. We think this is really important, and you need to, as a community, think about this, and here are the things we think you need to think about while you're doing it. Going back to the part about the one size fits all, if you mandated a particular policy, you've taken the community out of it. That's the problem with mandating the policy.
Right.
But the state board would be saying, we believe this is a really important educational topic, and we think your community needs to come up with your plan to do that. What I like about what Earl said is you need to have a plan supported by policy. Technology changes so fast, writing things in policy is difficult. Same thing would be true if you go to a regulation. You don't want the regulation to be too specific because those are harder to change. You want to be able to adapt to that. So when you look at what school districts have, is you have the board adopts policy, and then you have procedure, and then you have practice. Procedure and practice are more flexible and adaptable, policy less so. Regulation, much less so. Regulation is even less adaptable than statute, because the legislature, that can be done in a couple of weeks if they really want something to be done.
Yeah.
Regulation takes time, so if you do a regulation, I'm not saying you shouldn't, because technology probably will be around for a long time, so if you're gonna have a regulation that says you need to have a policy about the effective use of technology, see current guidelines. Those are all things to do, and but again, if everybody does what you're supposed to do, you don't need policy, but first you have to decide what everybody's supposed to do.
And to be clear, Wichita's is not their policy, it is their plan, right? So, and their plan is adaptable, and they said they will adjust as better information comes in.
And I wouldn't put all of this in policy. I mean, just as a superintendent, that's too detailed for policy. It's a great plan.
Yeah.
So what's wrong with requiring a plan? I didn't think that through.
It's like the difference between bylaws and standing rules. In the bylaws, you put the thou shalts, there is no question about it, and then the standing rules become the things that you might be able to take a vote that, the day before, or something like that, or the day of. You can change the standing rules so much easier in the bylaws, but the bylaws, everybody has an expectation.
I know.
That's a thou shalt not. No, but I'm talking about policy should be a thou shalt. The policy in the school, the parents should have the assurance that when they read that policy, and the policy is their kids have this kind of protection, or they have this expectation, that's the thou shalts, those are the rules. So there would be something, if you wanted something less than that, like the plans, that can be given to the teachers. So this is a plan, this is generally what we follow, but we can change from this, but there's different levels. And that's why I agree with Dr. Harwood, you would not put this much information into a policy that is a thou shalt.
Yes.
I think that clarity for parents, for teachers, for constituents requires a document. I kind of liked the suggest strongly that a policy is adopted. What if we require districts to state that they don't have a policy if they make that choice? Like, I should be able to go to any district's website and either find the policy or find a statement that says we do not have a written policy. Because I don't love the idea at the bottom of page 6 of the whole we're checking a box for governance, right?
Correct.
Like, I don't wanna check the box.
Correct.
And if they're doing it well, they're doing it well. So I just want that clarity. Do you have policy or not? Can I find it?
Would you require them to be findable? Something the legislature does a lot is requires it to be on the front page.
I thought about that. Is it another thing that gets tagged onto the front page?
It's gonna look like a NASCAR jersey soon
It
with all
is,
of these,
yes.
like.
Here's our regulatory, I mean, maybe that's not such a bad thing.
I'm not saying.
And I'll just, my other note was, no on the focus groups, but it might be neat if
Some choose.
parents could weigh in, like if there's a form or something, that might be a good recommendation for districts.
You broke my mind a little bit on the difference in the policy and plan and trying to think. I think what I've done, I've said it the whole time, but I've allowed myself to intermix both of those. So now trying to pull those apart and say, really though, what would be in a policy versus, I'm just gonna take Wichita because I can, like, that's a good plan. That's a good plan. There's other things we thought could be better.
But still.
But what would be in a policy, like the smallest policy, like would you put in, can I ask anyone who's been in a district, not to discredit the rest of us, like, would you put grade bands in a policy? Would you put terms and conditions? Would you put explicit about cost? Would you put parent involvement?
So I think, I mean, one, the difference between requiring a plan and policy is the local board does not need to be involved in a plan. They would have to be involved in a policy. So that would be one big distinction between how you require that. So if I look at this, it's a little bit of what you just said, is that my policy is going to be is that we will have, we will establish guidelines or procedure for instructional use of technology by grade bands. And I would probably go ahead and put in there, and whether it's K1, 2, 3, 5, I'm probably gonna divide that up based on how our district is organized. So, when you talk about grade bands, is that it's fifth grade in the middle school or in the elementary school, so I think you can leave that flexibility in there. And then it will address these things, and then the plan then goes on from that.
You know, Wichita does have a policy. And I haven't looked at it as closely as I intended to, but I think it matches what you're saying, right? It has a
And
definition.
the policy could also say something like, technology will only be used for appropriate instructional uses. I mean, it could be those kinds of things as well.
Policy would hold things like if you require opt-in versus opt-out, those kinds of things. The things that are in law that protect the parents already surrounding policy, that the parents have the right to demand paper and pencil if they want it. These are the kinds of things that you would make sure in the all caps are in policy, because that's already in law. You know, and it needs to be part of that policy, because it's the rule book for parents, because parents don't go and read all the laws, and they don't necessarily go to all the local board meetings, but all of these are the reflections of the values of the state of Kansas law, the regulations that we may have in place, that I don't know all of them, but, or what the local board had voted on, that, and if we are able to, I don't know where the line is, but if we are able to say, hey, you know, I just really don't even see how we would do this, but saying no technology just take your K to 2, no technology. Let's just say that was the only thing we came up with, and we put that into policy. That could go into policy. How they do work around that's going to be in the plan. That's going to be what the school comes up with, you know, or the LEA comes up with. But so I would just say right now, I could just say right off the top, one required policy is that the opt-in or opt-out, that the parents have the right to, I would hope that would be opt-in, but they have the right to opt their child out no matter what.
So a policy would be that the district is clear about their opt policy.
And that, well, that parents have a full knowledge of what their rights are. That was one of the things I noticed on this page with the parents, is it was kind of like, well, let me explain to the parents how everything is really okay, nothing to see here, you know, on how you might respond. not in any of those how you might respond, did it say, hey, it's your right to determine whether your kid's using technology or not? And that would be something that a parent should be informed of. What are their parental rights? I know there's a list of them, I don't know, Michelle probably knows them a lot better than I do, but those are the kinds of things I would have in policy, because that's communication.
Yeah, certain districts do a really good job, I think, of all these things you can opt out of, you know, but it's like, what am I opting out of? Or you know, if you don't know what you're opting out of, what was I opting into that I can opt out of? So that's why that opt-in, I like better informed and consent, like what am I getting when I get there? What's the content of the curriculum look like? Do I get to see all that? But I was checking things off for my kids. There's certain things that we just didn't do. Most of those things were non-academic things, pretty much. I mean, it was like, it's not academic, so no, we're not doing that. And they did a really good job of adhering to that. They did, or notifying you 48 hours, 3 days in advance if something's gonna happen. Our district did a really, really good job of, kudos to them for doing that, but, I'm not saying every district does that. I don't know if it's still being done, because kids are not in school right now. When they were there, I appreciated that I was able to opt out of it. I prefer to opt in and know what I'm opting out of in the first place, but I had to do some digging to find out what I was opting out.
Our next conversation is an opt-in conversation or opt-out, so I'm gonna slide that one into that. I'm hearing, we kind of poked on Jim, we want to keep poking on everyone. Again, I'm not trying to put you on the spot or blast anyone, but it is helpful to hear about where we are so we know where to spend our time as the agency is trying to prepare for the next steps.
I'm right with Jim, I would say, in that I'm almost the 50-50, because I do not want us to come across as compliance. KISA is hugely important to me. The academics, the focus, the high quality, I think it's making a huge difference. And I don't want to lose that traction at all. And I would like to think, I don't know if it's possible, that we can keep strongly going that direction, including tech in a big way. That's what I would prefer to see. I don't know if that's hard, I don't know if that's enough. But if we can't assist and support and keep at the same message, then yeah, what are we doing? I mean, I hear the superintendent's going like, seriously, I thought we had a focus. What are we doing here? Like, we do have a focus. How do we stay within that focus and yet address a very real issue, which is, if nothing else, it's safety. I mean, hugely. So I don't know how we stay within that umbrella and still push this topic. Has to become a huge part of that. That's my wish list. Like, can we do that and still make the difference that we need to make and still be strong enough that it really does push some districts into a better conversation? I don't know, but that's my wish list.
I really like what you just said, because it really does give more power even to quality instruction, which is what people are focusing on, and this could just be an augmentation to that. It's like, if you're gonna give good quality instruction and use good material in the classroom, then you need to be paying attention to what tech is doing and how to use it.
And I will say, and again, not to placate any of this, if I'm saying keep an eye on something, it's keep an eye on Renee's team.
Yes.
They're gonna be pushing, I'm gonna use that word, quality instruction,
Yes.
connected to the curriculum, aligned to the standards. If we do that well, there is no time for anything else, right? So I think you can remove technology and still have bored kids, I don't know those who heard me, playing with a clock in the corner. My education isn't better, but I'm not on a screen. Or we can have quality instruction that can clean up some other things. So I'm not saying none of this matters, right? It does matter, but I don't want to lose the agency's ability and Renee's team to drive like quality instruction through the materials connected to the standards. We'll do more for Kansas students, I believe, than anything else. And this is an issue where technology is in our lives so much that we need to be good stewards of our children and our time, and so we probably need a both and, right? But then the
So can I ask, Dr. Nugent, do you see a possibility in that?
My favorite line in Wichita's plan is the goal is not less technology or more technology, it's better use intentional, active, and balanced. That is how we want quality instruction, period. And we've got to drive the message that, do I think there could be a very simple policy? Yes. I think the more we overcomplicate the policy, the more of a distraction it is about doing the right thing.
That's my huge concern. I mean, it just is, it's such a concern. But at the same time, we have very real issues in the technology world, in some classrooms, districts, teachers, whatever. But how do we truly change what's happening in the classroom? Like, that's what we're trying to do. That's the whole framework of KISA.
But I also think we are on track with a division of accountability, a division of supports.
Yeah.
Really looking at what we need to address by identifying districts that need support and then providing that support and making sure that those district system schools are on the right track towards quality instruction. And it's going to take a mechanism to identify, to determine where the supports are necessary.
Right. So how do we have this conversation without losing that one? Like, that's my rub, that's my huge friction in all of it, is how do we do what we know is so intensely important, safety of our kids, of the state, all the things,
And
and not distract.
I don't want to undercut your question, but I think the first is, do we think there needs to be a policy? And if
But
yes,
does
then
that
how do we
work?
not, how do we make sure it doesn't get in the way?
But that's where I think our establishing minimum and state expectations with local flexibility, having that model policy that is not automatically their policy, they may take the minimum state, and that's all there is in their policy, that's the sum total of their policy, they have no other. You know, whatever this group came up as a minimum state expectations, which is probably just what's in the law. But at least they would have a policy, and we would be able to know that every school has at least some policy. And the parents, at the end of the day, I think the parents are they're the final measure of a great education. If we are satisfying the parents, I think we're going to get the best education possible, because I really think that by and large, the parents, the only thing they have to fall on, when you say they can go to the local board and say what? You're doing exactly what your non-existent policy says you can do, whatever you want. I mean, they don't have any power. They have nothing. It's the policy that gives the parents power, and it's the enforcement that the local board will actually follow their policy that ensures that the parents have that power.
I mean,
That's
it
the
might
only
take-
place the parents'
it might
power
take a
comes from.
policy. I'm not saying
Okay.
you won't.
I want to hear everyone, and I'm just going to put the nudge in, so
Yeah.
let's take a step forward into the next part of the conversation as we do this. So I think we're kind of circling now, let's take a step forward, but I
I'm
want to
sorry,
respect the
just
hand.
a second, and that is that, because of an injury in my house, I'm the visiting angel, and that's the reason I wasn't here yesterday, so I'm going to have to leave at this time.
Thank you for being here,
Okay.
Julie.
Thank you.
Give our best to your wonderful wife, please.
I saw some hands, I thought.
No.
Since we are kind of in a circular conversation, I came back to, wait a second, what problem are we trying to solve with the policy? And so I want to say again, as a parent, if I put on my parent hat and I go, okay, what frustrated me so much about the devices that we're giving to my kids? I think a lot of my problems would have been solved by better structure in IT. So coming back to that IT conversation about safety, privacy, controls, parent access. And so, yes, that's another tangent that takes us away from, do we want a policy? But I'm saying, if I didn't have to worry about my kids' safety, and if I didn't have to worry about them bringing devices home in elementary and middle school, that would have gone miles.
Yeah.
Could I ask Dr. Nugent a question? So, okay, so as the discussion was ongoing, I was kind of visualizing like a three-legged stool in your department. So I suppose professional development, curriculum, then assessments to determine how all those two impacted assessments. Do you see this as a plan folding into professional development and curriculum And if so, would it help us to devise something that would directly connect to that? So it's not like we're doing something isolated over here, but we're in cooperation with.
So we're really talking about professional learning in my division right now, and how all professional learning will be tied to a fundamental, right? So if you are, wanting us to come out and give professional development around a device, that isn't gonna happen. But if you have a quality curriculum that utilizes a device, we're gonna ensure that it's being used in the way it was intended and researched to be used around. So I really, like, our focus is, how does the professional learning you want us to support you in, does it follow your plan of action for your KISA plan? Does it align with your at-risk accountability plan, and is it aligned to a fundamental?
And again, that's going back to the why.
So the why is, how does what we're doing support quality instruction?
Correct, correct.
Hey.
Is it aligned to standards, is it connected to the curriculum, is it all the things? So in policy, it could even just say that. That's what you're doing, aligned to standards and connected to your curriculum.
Dennis?
Dr. Steele, I'm not sure if this is what you're asking for, but I wanna move away from this sort of thing and look and talk about the timeline. If you're comfortable with what we've talked about today, and you go to the department and with your deputies and stuff, and you're coming back with a receive item next month, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah.
Is I wanna hear what you would come up with as a team.
What I don't wanna do is I don't wanna come and bring back a model policy, and then all of you guys are like, well, we didn't actually really want a policy, right? That would be the miss mark. But if I'm hearing the majority say, we would like a model policy, or we would like a template for a policy, then I am proposing that KSD comes back and gives, we're trying to get as skinny as possible. I'm just gonna be very frank, we're getting as skinny as we possible. This would be our recommendation as a template for a model policy, in which the board can make the adjustments that they need. And then the board could vote, sorry, not a we, I'm not in the we, the board could vote, yep, we're gonna require a policy, and here's a template we will provide as guidance, and this is either what you want in the policy, or this is what you would suggest. This is what you would mandate in the policy, or this is what you would suggest in the policy. That's kind of that piece. So I'm hearing, so I'm not gonna go around the room, I'm hearing everyone say, we wanna take the next step and look at, yes, on a policy, and we're trying to get it skinny, and so we're looking at, do we mandate what is in, some minimum expectations, I would call minimum mandates, or just suggestions? You could have either of those.
And you've given us 4 weeks, you mentioned you give us 4 weeks to email you.
Yep.
With ours, and I wrote down if you're ready.
Yep.
So I'm ready to move ahead as far as that timeline is concerned.
I have some written down as well, and just by seeing other policies, but I appreciated, it's weird, I can't tell the difference between Frank and Renee, but one of them said, I liked it, so we'll give them both credit, like, the more we complicate it, the more it can become a distractor.
Exactly.
And Kelly Spurgeon, if anyone knows him, he's like my favorite person in the world. He worked at the agency. He did a joke with me one time where he drew a circle and wrote accreditation, he drew a circle and wrote at risk, and he drew a circle and wrote this, and then he drew a bigger circle around him and said, look, they're aligned. And he was kind of mocking this idea of, don't claim things are aligned when they're not. Some things really just don't fit. And that's not directly to you, but let's be clear. Can we make anything look like it fits? Yes, but it may just not fit well. And if we may be better off by saying we can't do everything, we've been saying that. What are the few things? Focus on instruction. That is the best thing you can do with your time, so let's put our time there. So anyway, please.
Between option 1 and 2, the thing I really like is in option 2 where it says KSDE rule develop guidance. Like, that's really what I'm focused on, is I want the districts to get guidance from KSDE. It doesn't have to be a policy.
Okay.
And I think we need something to react to.
We will create a model, I'm gonna say this, and I'm looking for head nods. KSD will create a model policy that has minimum expectations that you guys can decide later if those are a should or must. But the burden on you all will be decide if that is good guidance to send out, or if you are gonna require districts to do that. And you can talk to constituents whoever you want, but that's the burden on you, not us. You gotta decide when we give it back, if you're like, you know what, that's neat, let's give it to districts, or no, we will require that of districts, and we will add that burden on them, because we believe it is solving this problem. We good, fair there?
Yes, there is a problem.
Sounds good. Okay. So we have a third section. Do we want a quick break? Do we want to jump into it?
Good, very good. You said quick.
Oh, I always under-deliver. Come on, guys. It could be quick. All right. I might call in Dr. Conrad on this because he's worked in a district and understands how this works. So please, if I say anything that is theoretically accurate or inaccurate or just doesn't work that way, let me know. What page are we on?
8, I think.
Page 8. Yeah, top of page 8. Decision on possible policy-making direction. Parents acknowledge, yep, discussion. Jeez. Parent acknowledgement of student technology use and expectations. I will just say, I'm trying to give the board what they want, and many have said opt-in, so I'm trying to give you an option of what this could look like, and then we can talk about all the things, okay? So this is saying, this would be what I believe is an opt-in option. Let's jump. Here we go, task. Determine whether the board should require districts to obtain a parent acknowledgement of student technology use expectations, and if so, identify the approach on how to do it, okay? So this is Danny's opt-in. Sorry to look at that. Discussion. What problem are we trying to solve through a parent acknowledgement requirement? 2, is parent acknowledgement the appropriate lever to achieve the intended outcome? 3, what value would a statewide acknowledgement requirement provide, and what implementation burden would it create for districts? 4, what is the expectation of KSDE monitoring or verifying this compliant piece, and what additional administrative burden would verification and compliance create at the local levels? Next, 5, what authority does the state board have to establish a parent acknowledgement requirement? I don't actually know. 6 is, if a requirement is established, what expectations should be set statewide and what flexibility should remain. That's kind of been where we are. So option 1 would be districts have an acceptable use policy. And so we would be requiring them or asking them to expand that, right? When you go to enroll your kid, you check the acceptable use policy. So in that, we would be requiring or recommending that they also have a checkbox there to say, and I saw the policy or the plan, or I know what the district is doing when it comes to devices, and I agree. So that is am I saying anything there that is unrealistic?
I don't think so.
Okay, so during enrollment or registration, when you're doing all the checkboxes, there's a little bit of a compliance here, you're just checking through things, and all parents could check a box and say, yep, I'm aware of the policy and I agree.
We need to notarize that.
Danny wants a notary. All the parents have to be notarized. I appreciate the high bar. He's always helping us be our best. I would just show my hand on this. If you do this, I would not have a yes or no box. I actually don't think you should make it too easy to opt out, because I think there is a burden that a lot of individuals don't understand, and we need to educate kids and in large groups of them. So that will make it very difficult. But I think everyone should be transparent on how to opt out. So I value personally the friction. So you're telling my family you can, and this is how, and I think then it is the burden on me as a parent to say, okay, I will do that. I'm gonna go talk to the superintendent, as you said, and not my kid out. So I just wanna be very careful. I don't really love the opt-in as like a yes or a no, because I think depending on how I felt after Pizza Hut, I may be like, you know what, never mind. And that's you wanna be very cautious about. That's gonna be harder on a system if you have that. Okay, so that's option 1, expand acceptable use. Option 2 is establish a separate parent acknowledgement process. This is much bigger, and I did not put a ton of time into this because I think it is a crazy big lift, but it is, does the state want to require districts to have some separate process in which parents acknowledge that they understand this? Areas where I think this is really weak, if you don't require a policy, I don't know how you have parents check off that they what? know the policy, right? Like, there is some level of like, what are you going to acknowledge if it's not required? So if it's just guidance, like, hey, are you aware that your district's using technology? There's a little bit there that, like, I think the acknowledgement would have to be, I acknowledge that there is a policy or a plan, and I agree. And if not, here's this thing. All right, jump into some of these things.
Well, that's what made me nervous about some of the language that was coming over from across the street when I saw like limited like the hours. Like, who decided now that there's certain hours that are, we're gonna just harm your kid a little bit less? That's what made me nervous. It's like, we know this is all harmful. We know technology is harmful for learning processes. That's the evidence, because we know the other evidence on the other side, writing is better, right? We know that from years and years and years. When we did this, we didn't have the evidence to show parents that this was actually going to be good for your kid. Now we're going to just, 10 years later, say, we're just going to harm them a little bit less. So we're going to say, we're the experts. Who are the experts? And that's what makes me nervous about when we just say, when we're allowing things to happen across the street, when they're starting to do like specific hours and things like that. Again, where's the evidence? So show me the evidence that shows that this learning is going to be good for my kid. They're going to retain. They're going to have less anxiety. That's where we're, again, the final thing is parents, you're showing me evidence that this is going to be good for this is going to be good for learning, for retention for my kid. And so that's at the end of the day, show me the evidence that shows that this is going to work. And show me that these limited hours or having this technology in the school is going to continue to work.
My response to that is, I think we're going to try to drive all districts to have materials that are aligned to the state standards, right? This is not a direct thing, right? But aligned to state standards. And that your tier 2 interventions are also aligned and evidence-based. I know that is an independent conversation than technology. I do think there is some educational technology that does have evidence that learning has improved by doing what was required. Some may say, well, screens harm kids in other ways, but I'm saying for academic improvement, I'm not trying to say all of it, right? There's a lot that's labeled as great, and it is not. It is consumer tech under the guise of ed tech. But there is evidence out there that learning has improved because using a technology.
Learning as far as retention of knowledge, or learning,
well,
or is it just processing the information and getting through that test and doing well on that assessment at that time, and then forgetting it within a month or two?
Fair question, but I think ESSA creates these tiers of evidence, and they have peer review, and peer review has found that there are technological tools that have improved learning. But just to be clear, that's a subset of a big conversation. I'm not trying to say therefore none of it matters. But I do think we have to be careful. I do think there is evidence on both sides of how there is both giving harm. There is evidence on both sides. And again, let's be clear. Tylenol has proven to work if you use it how it is supposed to work. So I also don't want to give a head nod of, well, they said this diet plan worked and I didn't follow it. Why isn't it not working? Because you're not following it. So when there's an evidence base, you do have to follow, it works if you do blah. And so what we would try to do is if you're using it. So I know that's a little bit off, but I do think there's conflicting on both sides, but I think there's evidence on both sides that some technology does work if used with fidelity according to what the evidence says.
But at the end of the day, it's up to the parents.
At the end of the day, totally. And I have talked to people that said, I don't care how much your evidence shows, I don't want my kid on a device.
So we need to help the schools. We're going to give this guidance. We have to help those school districts with that local decision, with those parents. So 30% of the parents, we talked about percentages earlier with federal government things, they want 95% or they want different percentages. At the end of the day, 30% of the people are pushing back on that. We need to respect those 30% of those parents that want their child to learn in a different manner, in a different way that's not technology based. But how are we going to support those districts to say, oh, we can't have all this curriculum on technology. I mean, now we got to switch over. I mean, maybe they've already done that. Some of the smaller districts are. We already had a backup plan. So we're not gonna follow, you know, just because Johnson County wants to push us this way, or whatever they were talking about. We just need to make sure we're supporting them when those parents are pushing back, and not taking away their accreditation, or not taking away their federal money, or whatever it is, because they push back on the way that their child learns best.
Yes.
Which is maybe technology, not technology.
I wanna pulse back to this piece, and I can't help myself but to respond. Yes, I agree. And if a community, if a local district has 90% of the parents saying, we want our kids to learn on technology because we believe that is best for them to prepare themselves for the future world, are we willing to support that community in that? Or are we saying, no, we know best, we want a ban, period, right? Like, this is one of those community questions. If a district's like, we believe in the value of technology, will we say the people spoke, right? 90% of your district wants it, the other 10% needs to decide how open enrollment works, or what an opt-out looks like, or anything like that. So, forgive me for the philosophical, I do agree. We have to, I believe personally, but I don't even have a vote here, we gotta support those local communities. Back to this, do you want, I mean, this is hairy and it's messy, but I'm trying to, you know, heard it a couple times from Danny, I think. It was you.
Understand what my thinking is, we put so much responsibility on the teachers to be the parents, that my whole goal is to make the educators and make the parents, actually, because the parents, you know, there's a few parents that are involved, having had kids and grandkids and great-grandkids. And then there's a whole bunch that aren't involved. And so, but then when something happens, my kid didn't do that, and we're not, I feel like we're not communicating. We don't have, and it's not the teachers they want everything to be a good way. But the parents are, and so that's my whole thinking when I'm in opt-in and everything.
You're trying to force parents to make a decision.
Well, and to be communicating.
But that's not our role, is my concern. We can't force a parent to do their.
Well, you can force them to check a box.
Well,
Yeah.
But I will say, and when proposing this, I'll say Dr. Conrad started to call him in. He said, Jake, tell me about your enrollment. I was like, went great. He's like, what'd you check? I don't know. I mean, if I'm being honest, like, I don't know, I checked a lot of boxes. So he was like, okay, cool. Right? Just this element of like, we can go to a lot of work. I will say the flip side of that is, if someone maybe like Melanie is looking for it, we put it in the place where she can find it. So Melanie may find it there. Jake's probably not, because I have a different threshold right now that I'm looking for. But yes, I did enroll my kids. I clicked a lot of boxes. I admittedly don't know all the boxes I clicked. But we can.
And he's not a bad parent, and she's not a bad parent, so.
Well, that's debatable, but we can.
And your wife's not.
Yeah.
So your wife knew what boxes were probably
She
there.
actually knows, so anyway, sorry, I'm gonna try to take a step forward. I'm the problem in this conversation, not you all. Do you want to require every district to allow they have to have parents sign off that they understand the district's policy? I'm not trying to kick it down the road, but you may be able to say, we're not ready for that. Let's first just tackle policy.
I'm sorry.
That is a heavy burden on districts.
Yes.
I thought they already had to. I had to sign off on all the policies anytime I put my kids in school. I thought they had to.
So with the AEP, you should have to require that sign off before I hand you a device, that you understand
That's a use.
what that means by giving you the device. So I think that we also need to think about, as we're asking parents to say, I understand the policy, that they understand what the avenue is.
So it's
To now
separate.
say, well, I've seen your policy, I don't agree with these aspects of how you're using it. Kindergarten, you say 15 minutes, I don't want 15 minutes. So I'm going to up. So what's that process look like? Because the AEP, if I don't sign off on it, from my perspective, I don't hand you a device until you agree to that.
That's
Because
the
there's,
acceptable use.
yeah.
So, sorry, can I clean things up a little bit? I made a mistake. Currently, there is an acceptable use policy in every district.
There should be, yeah.
There should be.
Part of the,
Yeah.
What'd you say?
so federal requirement.
Federal requirement has an acceptable use policy. The way Kansas City did it, not to call them in, but you did not hand over a device at all until that box was checked.
Right.
Is that how it's always done?
Because there's responsibilities associated with that device that you need to be aware of.
So we would, under this, we would be adding another box or expanding the acceptable use to not only say whatever it currently says, but to also say, you have seen and know the policy.
And
of
you're,
the district.
yes, yep.
Well,
And
that you're opting
what's the backup?
into it, you
What's the
have to have an
backup?
option.
Not
If you're going to say, this is what you have to sign,
And if you don't.
but you don't really have any choice, I mean, what, like no school?
Yeah, I mean, the
You
choice
have to be
is-
able to know that the parents have the option that if I don't sign that box, what's gonna happen? And they need to be well informed. It doesn't need to be, you know, like, here's your only option.
Okay. Melanie?
Transparently, as a parent who has in the past checked the box, and yes, my husband checked it this year, but you can't not check the box.
Which is not good.
So it is an opt-in, but if you want to opt out, that is a bit harder, which to your point, Commissioner, I think it should be, because it's a discussion then about, well, if you're not going to follow this path, then what path will you follow? And how are we going to manage that? So I think there is some consultation that needs to happen there. I would add to, I kind of went through this at the elementary level when I wanted different protections on device. And I went to the district and said, can I have these protections? And they said, well, yes, but the way that we do that is this kind of nuclear option that shuts down a lot of things on the device for the kid. And I realized that that would then other my child. And so I needed to kind of go through that process, and ultimately I decided not to ask for those blocks and to allow them to have the device like all the other kids had the device, because I didn't want them to feel like they weren't included. But that's a conversation that's really important to happen for parents.
So when you say they can't not check the box, like,
It depends on the district, right, and how you go through enrollment. Did you go to the gym, were you there in person, did they hand you papers and you had to sign a paper? If so, then your conversation around that paper was probably different than if you enrolled online and you logged into a portal and you clicked all the boxes and you clicked through all the screens and you don't remember what boxes you checked and now you're done, right? But you can't finish that process if you don't check the box.
well, that's what I'm asking. So if you don't click the box, that's the A,
You're stuck.
you don't
So-
enroll.
You didn't complete the form. Sometimes, yeah, it depends.
Right, you can make it a requirement, so that way all of your paperwork is done and finalized. And some, I know my last district, we did not require it as part of registration or enrollment, because then we know that once parents leave the site, right, we don't get them back. And it becomes a more difficult process to get them through in order to complete their registration. So we did not require that aspect of it to go through, but we did then follow up and make sure that they got,
Okay.
because we didn't hand them a device, and they were
Right,
like, hey, where's my
right, you
kid's
force
device?"
the conversation through no
Sign
device
off on it.
space.
And I don't know if this can be in policy, but there shouldn't be a, you're stuck with that box. And if you don't, if you don't have your kid participate in that, we're gonna have them sit in a study hall in the room by themselves and be the odd man out that none of the other kids be around. Well, they have classes where, you know what I'm talking about, when you opt, I'm gonna go to the big bomb, when you opt your kid out of sex education and they're sitting in the library while all the other kids are watching a video. There shouldn't be this sense of, you didn't opt your kid in, so they're going to be the one that everybody stares at because they know their mom didn't sign the box, that kind of.
There's no choice there.
I am hearing and mentally seeing in my mind a little box that says, I acknowledge that I have seen the district's technology policy, and then that's in bold. It doesn't have to be this way, but just walk with me. And then underneath it, not in bold, says, and if I do not agree with the policy or want to opt out of that policy, I can go talk to the technology lead or superintendent or whoever. And so you are clicking that box, or you are not clicking that box, and if you are not, it is telling you where to go. That is it.
I like that.
The hard part is I'm hearing Frank be like, the more we get into the details, the harder we're making it on districts, right? Which is like, we're gonna tell them to put it in here, and then they're gonna have to figure out who to go to, and then and it's like, and we can, and then they need to decide if by not clicking the box, you can finish registering, or you can finish registering without, right? Like just that small piece is, again, maybe the right thing to do, but I imagine superintendents are not gonna be super excited about disrupting that world, and we still may say that's the right thing to do. Just kind of sit with this.
It's the cost of an opt-in.
It's the cost of opting.
It is.
So if we want to pursue that path, it has to be collected somehow. And so what's the most convenient way?
Can I ask district people, I mean, put your superintendent hat on, state board's asking you to do this, what are you feeling and seeing and hearing? Like, yep, this is reasonable, like,
So the AUP is already there. And I think districts, but it's sometimes a little bit like the terms of use agreement you have whenever you download a new piece of software. Did you read the whole thing? And when you got to the end, if you didn't check the box, you can't go on, and then you don't download the software. This is similar to that, in that if you don't check the box and agree, then you don't get the device. The problem with opt-in is not that I'm concerned about parents having the right to exercise their rights. It's the work involved in the people that don't opt in and didn't know what they were getting into. So that having some requirement in the policy of how you're notifying parents and getting their acknowledgement, I think that's doable, or they're doing it already. And you can have then model guidance of, when you get to the bottom of the terms of the use, if you don't agree with these, do this instead. I think you're still gonna have a lot of parents who are gonna,
Check box.
whatever box gets to the next page the fastest is going to be the most common. It's how easy is it to, I guess, how much do they know about the choice they're making?
and I think my concern is, say I get really frustrated with the policy mid-year, and you required me to check a box. And you say, well, you checked the box, I don't care. Because I'm gonna say, well, yeah, but that was in the detail, and so I don't know that by checking the box, that's going to hold up to be, if I come frustrated mid-year and the district says you check the box, I'm not gonna probably like, oh yeah, you're right, never mind, we're good. Right, like that's not going to happen. So this to me is a step that's like, it can happen. I don't know what it solves if you're frustrated by it. Maybe in policy it's just good to tell people, right? So that's kind of a piece there. And I will say, when I was a teacher, I did use technology as the main way to educate people. We can debate about how that worked later, but the first 2 weeks was so disruptive because I made the parents had to opt in. And I'm not saying that was wrong, but I could not start teaching for a month as I tried to get every single parent understand. And so I was always trying to do multiple lesson plans, which is the first year, second year, and third year teacher was a heavy burden that I bore. Hey, we can't get a hold of your mom, she works, call your mom, trying to get her at night, just constantly trying to set that up as a teacher. The burden was high for me, and it disrupted a lot of learning. And I think there were other students that were worse off because I just couldn't quite get everyone on board.
And it wasn't because they were choosing to opt out, it was because you didn't get them
That's
to
right.
opt in.
And no one, and again, in my time, and this is 2016, 17 area, I never had a parent have major problems. We had some minor ones, but no one ever opted out completely. It was like, hey, is this it, right? So all of that work, everyone did it in the end anyway. It just was an immense amount of work trying to make it happen.
But Dr. Steele, this is a different day.
It is.
10 years
Yeah.
later.
Don't take my word. I just want you to know the cost from a teacher's perspective a long time ago.
But could you have a time frame that it's like, this is the opt-in time frame, and if you do not go through the process of choosing your opt-in, then it becomes an opt-out after that? I don't know, like, you have this time frame, we fall on opt-in, but if you're not gonna be available, then we're gonna go forward and you'll have to opt out at that point. I mean, they still have the option to opt out, but now their kid came home with homework that they were like, I don't like this, and you're like, well, you could have opted them into that or not at one point, but now you can opt them out still. You never lost your right to opt out.
You never lose your right to opt out.
Right.
Right?
Exactly. And so I don't know, does
I
that
mean,
work?
yes, you always have the right to say, I don't want this for my kid. What
Right.
the district,
Uncheck the box.
what the district does with that is like, under my understanding, it's the district's call. Okay.
I just, for parents who want more control, and then there's the parents, like, I would have probably just signed, I don't know, just let me check it off, I'll just
Yeah.
sign, but not every parent's like that.
So don't forget. And there's a third type of parent though that's not engaged. And that's where you get into trouble, is you're asking somebody to make a decision and they're not available to make a decision.
Right, what I'm saying
Or
is
there's
they
not a parent.
automatically just go to the opt-out category.
But that creates different problems.
So the option is, in the policy, you require parent acknowledgement and let the district decide
How you do parent
how
acknowledgement.
you do
So the
parent
smallest way, sorry, just to pull us back a little bit, is require a policy, and in the policy, require parent acknowledgement. And then districts will come up with different creative ways on how to get parent acknowledgement done. And you may not love it, to be honest, but it is their right to decide how to engage.
Say that one, just say that.
So, well, I mean, so I think that if you are requiring a policy, you could require the policy to have something in there about how parents will acknowledge that they have been, I'm not gonna say understand, because the board cannot make sure everybody understands the policy. That if they acknowledge that they have, it's just like when you go to the doctor's office, you acknowledge that you've been given the opportunity to read the privacy notice. So it's acknowledging that you've been given the opportunity to see that. And then the plan may then detail out how that's gonna work, and that could be, when I get to the bottom of the AEP, the opt-in is already checked, but I can check the opt-out, even if that takes me to the page, it says, just so you're aware, what happens if this is the case, do you still wanna opt out? I mean, those are all fine things to do, but the policy just says you have to have a system of parent acknowledgement, and the plan can be more specific with that. I think districts are gonna, if you get to the point where 30% are opting out, you're gonna have to do something different with what you're doing. Scale makes a difference.
Yes. And in smaller districts, it's not the big deal that it is in Wichita and Shawnee Mission and like it's just different, and we have to allow that difference to sit.
What I just heard is Dr. Harwood giving us an option to have a little less in the weeds, but still a standard, right? So this would be saying, we're not requiring this third section. It will be required through the policy, and in the policy, we will require a section where a system gives parents some acknowledgement of what's happening there, so, yeah.
Just kind of refreshing, for 30 years or more, parents have been opting out of many things. I taught English, and there were certain novels that parents did not want their children to read, so they opted out of that activity, and we had an alternate book that they could read. So I'm wondering, how much are we trying to undertake parent responsibility, even based on what they're probably doing anyway, when parents know that they can opt out? I don't know that opt-in has been so much the language currently, but parents know. So is this another layer that would be necessary to really address this issue, which is a current critical issue of the use of technology? And if a parent doesn't want their child to have a personal device or doesn't want their child to use one in the classroom, they're gonna respond right away. They're gonna tell teacher on, when they come from orientation, I prefer my child not use technology in the classroom.
Or not bring it home.
Or not bring it home. They're gonna do it right away. It's not, 2 months down the road and their child brought home a computer. Oh, well now, I mean, if they do opt out, that's fine, but I don't know that that is something we should anticipate as being our responsibility for this.
I do have a student, a parent that called me, it's been about a year ago, but she wanted her child to opt out of a book that was in the classroom, and the teacher said, no, it was required.
So again, that would
And
be
she
something
had,
to take to the district, yeah.
she went to the board, nobody cared, they don't stop it, that's where I'm saying, I am coming across these kinds of situations, I can name a number of them. That whether it's bullying, whether it's attendance laws, whether it's policies that are in attendance, where the policy's not being followed at the local level, or this teacher, I don't even know if it was a policy thing for that, I would expect, but the teacher just argued with her and told her she had to read that book. It wasn't, she didn't have the opportunity, and I could go back and try to find that, because I referred her over to somebody, I could probably find her. But that is the kind of stuff that is going on. And it's not going on everywhere, but it does happen. And that's where that's the thing I'm looking for, is how can we provide support to parents the policy's in place, it says the rule is A, and the school doesn't do A. What does that, where does the parent go? What does the parent do? They have no place to go, and they don't have any control over their kid's education if they're just being told no.
It's just not a state board role. We have local responsibilities at local levels. If we take on that burden for every student,
Well, we do
It's-
it for special education, formal complaints, I
that's a
don't know
federal,
why.
that's a federal.
Well, I understand, but we do it.
Still a federal,
so-
it's matching federal law.
Right,
So
but,
if we're going to basically legislate for one situation across the state, I mean, that's what we hear from our schools. Things that happen in the legislature, it's like one particular district's having an issue and then the whole state pays for it. Like, that's what we're trying not to do. Be so detailed, and it's really not, I don't believe, our role as a state board to go down to the granular as that, like, there are tough situations, that is absolutely real, and we work hard to try to find answers for people. But we can't use those situations and make a blanket.
but I would disagree. Aren't we required to ensure that the local boards are following state and federal laws?
Well,
Aren't we required to? I mean, I guess it's a legal counsel question.
I do, can I not placate that, but this is a question that's come up multiple times, and perhaps we want a conversation around it. I don't have the answers, but I think this has come up in multiple topics, right?
Right.
And so I think if not to dismiss this, can I write this down as something to discuss and
We need to know.
drive us back to this really quick? Okay. What I am hearing, unless I'm wrong, is what problem are we trying to solve with this opt-in, and perhaps a thinner but still powerful version of this being in the policy. If anyone feels like that is not true, let me know, but I want to walk back through now everything that I just heard and what I believe the state board is going to be asking this Department of Education to do in preparation for you guys to review and then to act, okay? So this month, the Kansas State Department of Education will look at giving guidance of a plan. Wichita's is a good plan. If anyone else wants to put another plan forward, that is great. What I'm hearing now with the policy that I heard some things that maybe that we suggested could be in a plan, and I'll just have to go back with the team and figure out how to do that. Going into the policy piece, the Kansas State Department of Education will try to give a stencil template or a policy that will have minimum expectations. The word expectations to me is a requirement, and we will build it out as such, and then a suggested piece. And the burden on you all will be decide yes to the policy, and if those minimum requirements are what you want in there, or you decide by next month, I don't want any of it in there, it's just suggestions. One of those we will have ready is this parent acknowledgement. So then the third piece here is we're not gonna move forward on this opt-in piece because we're gonna pull that into the policy. So I'm not gonna, the option 3 of the check the box piece, we're gonna see if we can handle that in policy. So next time you should receive a model policy or a template that has areas and build that out. That is the main work of us to hand to you all, and we need to figure out the format. I mean, the hard part for me, if I'm just showing my hand, is how do you hear from everyone, this is what I like, this is what I don't, to get that built so it's like, yep, we have the right policy. Because I think all of you are gonna be some shade of, this is good, but there are gonna be some things you don't like. That is what I'm hearing. Did I mishear anything or leave any idea that came out today that you're like, yeah, you missed it?
any way that we can frame that around high quality instruction and materials, like if we can somehow make sure that message is coming
Front and
across.
center.
Yeah,
Absolutely,
yes,
we can do that.
that,
That'll be our high marks. I say we can do it, that'll be our high marks, is to
Yeah.
focus on the instruction and then address the technology.
so we're truly trying to keep that focus that we're on. And this is a piece of that, but it's not to take focus away from, it's just a piece of. And an important piece. And then, and you'll find it in your notes, the IT, security and safety, possibly tech standards within a plan. Like taking Wichita's maybe and adding those key things.
So what did you just say, Kat? I didn't catch what you just, the last thing,
For guidance, like,
guidance.
you know, definitely starting with Wichita's and maybe adding a few.
Adding a few other things that we would suggest would be valuable to have guidance, such as can align to the standards, the technology standards and other things.
IT security.
Can I ask a question on live and color? To what extent do you want me to talk to superintendents about this? So my Thursday Zooms start this Thursday. We already have an agenda, so we're great. Would you like me to bring this up or anything in it to refer them to you? Right? I just wanna be clear about, hey, you know, we're thinking this, we want people to be engaged. Wait till we're done.
I'd rather hear
Engage
from
them
the
now.
local
I think
boards.
you go ahead and talk to them.
I'd rather hear from the local boards. That has been always my focus, is to try to engage them more into the process. Because this is a representative body, we represent, you know, our whatever portion of we the people, and that we represent the same people as the local board. And that's where the superintendent is doing their job, but they, at the end of the day, when we're talking about policy and the parent saying, I need policy to be followed and it's not being followed, I'm being forced to use this book, whatever, you're saying they have to go to the local board. Well, we need to engage the local board. If that's where it lands.
Just to comment, I don't have a platform with the local board right now,
I don't think any of us do.
but I have a platform with superintendents.
No, we do.
Yeah.
It's through our service centers, and when I visit ESDAC or Smoky Hill, those superintendents, we have the conversations. Sometimes the board members are there occasionally, it's rare, but the superintendents have that communication. And to me, it's like, that's the chain of command, or whatever, that it happens. It's a natural thing. that
No,
happens.
I don't, the superintendents are not elected. I report to the same people at the local, I have been working for a year and a half, I've got a whole Excel file, but I can still only get maybe 50%. I have 55% email addresses for the local boards in my district. And I email them, I just emailed them all last week, over the teacher discipline thing, because that was such a big deal.
I bring us to a principle, which is, in the cell phone thing that happened with the legislature, one of the things we heard from SUPS is they felt like it was pushed on, or it came out of nowhere. So my suggestion to board members is, if we are considering this, the last thing we want to hear from superintendents is you sprung it on us. So you can decide what that means for you with your local superintendents, because they will come back to you. So if you want them to reach out, if you want me to reach out, but we want to make sure our goal is not to spring things on people. Our goal is to be transparent and accountable.
What I'd love is if you could get our superintendents to give us a complete list of how I can contact the local boards in my district. That's what I would love.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know about everybody else, but to me, that's a very useful tool, because if something happens, like even what you just explained to me, we had something in my district, to be able to call out to those local board members and say, is there anything I can do to support you? I would love to be able to do that.
Okay. I yield the time.
So what was your answer?
I think
Saying
under
something on
Zoom,
your
you
Zoom
can
about-
talk.
I think.
No one ever said it. I got a should, talk to them, talk to them,
You
talk to
can talk to
them.
whoever you want to.
Okay, I just don't want to, I don't want anyone saying, this is our business. or-
What do you think will happen if you don't say something?
No, I think you should.
All right, I'm gonna talk to them. I'm gonna let them know what we're thinking and what we're doing this
Yeah.
month in preparation for next
Yeah,
month.
I don't have a problem with that. They maybe haven't encouraged them, at least in my district, to contact me through the local board members. I don't want the superintendent to call me, I want the local board members to call me.
Okay. Madam Chair, it was a good joke, but really, it's your meeting.
Okay. Okay, so I think, I don't have a clue what time it is, I've lost my phone away from me. Well, there you go, that's not so bad. Okay, I think we are good to go, I think. The department feels like they know where they're going. And as Commissioner said, if in the next, I would not give it a ton of time, because they're going to be preparing for next meeting very quickly. So if you have thoughts that come, quickly email him and say, here, I remember this, or I heard this, and you want to add it too. So don't wait 30 days to do that. Do that in the next week and get that information to him as quickly as possible. Yes, sir?
I'd like to thank the staff.
Yes.
Because you guys are in it every day, and we appreciate that you know, giving us feedback, because that's really, really important. This was a great discussion all the way around.
In the spirit,
The good and bad.
the spirit of thanks, thank you for letting me pull you over here. It's a gamble, but I did want to change the environment to see if we could just sit at a table and not present. I just can't personally, setting at a podium to try to do this with you guys would not be my favorite task. And so I do like exercising the policy arm, helping the board exercise their policy arm in doing this. So I found it valuable. You're welcome to give us feedback later if more things like this would be valuable or if we never.
Frankly, I would love to see more of this at our board meetings, our regular, giving plenty of time in the agenda for us to have these deep conversations and go around the room. And because this is something I think we could have on a number of topics. And I don't need so many KSDE maybe programs as much as, this is my only time in the whole month to talk to these people in one big group, and that's what I really enjoy about this, was being able to have this.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Maybe we don't need that big boardroom like that, so we can sit around the table like this, so we can look each other in the
I
eye.
know, it's really helpful to be able to do that.
Maybe we're wasting money on that board.
I'll just make good